Chapter 651. In my previous life there was a judgment. Although King Qi was a prince, he was a descendant of the Emperor of Heaven, so he didn't lack any cultivation techniques or pills. It was far easier for him to cultivate martial arts than ordinary people. Thus, although he never left his residence, King Qi's cultivation was already above the vast majority of martial artists. He was ranked at the very top of the world, even stronger than valiant generals of the empire, like Geshu Han and Fomin Linta. For Gao Lisher to send him flying, this is simply inconceivable. Wang Chang's mind was in turmoil. In an instant, this charmingly chubby eunuch, who resembled a Maitreya Buddha, had suddenly become incomparably tall and unfathomable. But what was most shocking was that eunuch Gao had actually dared to attack King Qi. This was the most shocking thing of all. Crazy, he's completely crazy. Everyone on the observation platform was dumbfounded. King Qi had always been difficult to control in the court. None of the nobles or ministers dared to casually attack him. Even a clan of ministers and generals like the Wang clan was extremely wary of King Qi. Attacking King Qi was something that no one dared to even think about. But Gao Lisher had sent him flying without even thinking about it. Feng Yuani, you dare! At the bottom of the imperial stairway, King Qi's furious roar echoed through the sky. He abruptly climbed up from the ground, a murderous aura surging all over his body. A pair of beast-like eyes glared viciously at Gao Lisher at the top of the white jade stairs. Damned slave! He was just a slave of the imperial clan, not even a man, yet he dared to attack him. He deserved to die 10,000 times over. King Qi's eyes flashed with a vicious light. If looks could kill, Gao Lisher would have died thousands of times over. Your Highness King Qi, the ceremony has yet to end. Where are you planning to go? Eunuch Gao stood on the imperial stairway, looking down from above. His complexion was ruddy, and he wore a smile on his face. He still had that charmingly naive appearance. Even though King Qi had called out his true name in the secular world, there was not the slightest hint of anger on his face, making it impossible to guess what he was truly thinking. A slave who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I'll kill you. King Qi's killing intent blazed. As soon as he finished speaking, golden light exploded and the roar of a dragon filled the air. A majestic aura exploded from King Qi's body like a storm. As countless people watched, the void twisted. Above King Qi's body, a golden dragon the size of a mountain roared and soared into the sky. Shockingly, its target was Gao Lisher, who was standing on the high platform. So what if it was Gao Lisher? So what if he was the chief eunuch of the inner palace? If he angered him, he would still kill him. He didn't believe that they would dare to do anything to him. The dignified King Qi, a member of the royal family. Your Highness, you can't. Yao Guangyi completely lost his composure. Who was Gao Lisher? He was indeed a eunuch with a lowly status. It was impossible for him to be mentioned in the same breath as a noble member of the imperial family, like the Prince of Qi. But he was just an ordinary eunuch. In the imperial palace, including the capital, who other than King Qi would dare to treat eunuch Gao as an ordinary eunuch? He had served at the side of the Holy Emperor for several decades, experiencing the War of the Princes and the calamity of Ascension. Given Gao Lisher's various contributions, how could his status in the imperial palace be described by the ordinary word eunuch? Buzz! In the blink of an eye, Prince Qi and eunuch Gao, two supreme experts of the present age, were about to start a fight in the imperial palace. Just at this moment, something strange happened. Rumble. The earth quaked as a majestic energy, dignified and noble, surged out of the depths of the imperial palace like a flood, instantly engulfing the entire Tang dynasty imperial palace. Bzzz. The clouds began to churn, and the clear sky was suddenly overcast with dark clouds. A powerful energy that Wang Chong had never sensed before, one that reigned above all things in the world, instantly appeared in everyone's perception. Before this dignified and noble energy, everyone was as insignificant as an ant. Even King Qi and eunuch Gao, powerful existences of the present age, became dim and colorless before this energy, like fireflies before the bright moon. Impudent! A voice came from the depths of the Taiji Palace. In front of this voice, everyone felt their souls tremble. Even King Qi, who had just been arrogant and despotic, wanting to attack Gao Lisher in front of the Taiji Palace, was now filled with fear, prostrating himself on the ground, kneeling before the imperial stairway made of white jade. "Your Majesty." King Qi's face was lowered, his entire body trembling like a mouse that had seen a cat. Although he was used to being arrogant and despotic, and did whatever he wanted to do, it depended on who he was dealing with. Before the Holy Emperor, no one had ever dared to be so impudent. Although the Holy Emperor was lenient and allowed his ministers to express their opinions in court, even if the old imperial censor Duan Chao had slapped Duan Qian, as long as the Holy Emperor did not say anything, this was not a problem in the court. Throughout the ages, only the current Holy Emperor could be so lenient and indulgent towards his ministers. The reason King Qi could act so unbridled in the capital was also related to the Holy Emperor's lenient way of ruling. But once the Holy Emperor became angry, even an unruly person like King Qi could only lower his head, not even daring to breathe too loudly. Boom! The earth shook. Although they couldn't see anything, they could clearly hear a set of heavy footsteps walking out of the Taiji Palace. These footsteps, one after another, seemed to trample on everyone's hearts. Buzz! A massive shadow shot out from the imperial palace. Before everyone's eyes, a black shadow had appeared at the top of the imperial stairway, in front of the Taiji Palace. There was no sound, no movement. The moment that figure appeared, he instantly became the center of the world. Heaven and earth, the sun and moon, the mountains and rivers, and all living things all bowed to his feet. He was like a god standing at the center of the imperial palace. In an instant, the atmosphere in the imperial palace became incomparably solemn. King Qi's face immediately pressed against the ground, not daring to breathe too loudly. "Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor!" Amidst the thunderous cheers, all the imperial army guards in front of the Taiji Palace, the ministers on the viewing platform, and even Wang Chong, who was closest to the Taiji Palace, all knelt down. In this instant all was silent. Even the drop of a needle could be heard. Yao Guangyi knelt on the viewing platform, his entire body drenched in cold sweat. King Qi's personality had always been like this. He did things impulsively, never considering the consequences. In reality, not many people could make him consider the consequences. But this time was different. After the victory in the southwest, the Holy Emperor had rewarded Wang Chong. This news had already been announced to the world. Inside and outside the imperial court, from the 6 ministries of civil and military, all the ministers attached great importance to this matter. King Qi's impulsive actions had finally angered the Holy Emperor. "Li Yu, are you planning to leave now?" The Holy Emperor's voice was lofty and aloof, making it impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. This lowly subject does not dare. King Qi's face was pale and filled with fear. Bean-sized beads of sweat dripped to the ground, instantly drenching a large area. Even though he was normally daring and reckless, he was now like a mouse encountering a cat. All was quiet. When the Holy Emperor spoke, no one dared to breathe too loudly. Only his voice could be heard in the imperial palace. At this moment, no one understood this more than Wang Chong. In his last life, the Holy Emperor had been publicly acknowledged as the #1 expert, the existence closest to God, that everyone had acknowledged. But Wang Chong had only heard of him. In his last life, he had never even met the Holy Emperor. In the regional commander's incident, Wang Chong had also met the Holy Emperor, but at that time, they had been separated by a great distance, not as close as they were now. Moreover, the Holy Emperor had not revealed his unfathomable martial arts. Too powerful. Wang Chong lowered his head and mentally muttered to himself. The Saint Emperor's strength was too strong, so strong that it was beyond imagination. Even in his last life, when Wang Chong was at his strongest, he had been insignificant when compared to the Holy Emperor. At this moment, Wang Chong suddenly understood why those seniors of the Tang dynasty would speak of the Holy Emperor with so much regret after the calamity. In the War of the Southwest, Wang Chong had slaughtered nearly 10,000 Mengshi, Yusang warriors, so his cultivation level could not be considered low. But at this moment, Wang Chong could sense that the holy emperor before him seemed to contain a world within his body, making it impossible to tell where his limits lay. Even with Wang Chong's cultivation as the war saint, it was impossible for him to estimate just how powerful the holy emperor was. This was truly unfathomable. Since that's the case, kneel there. Wang Chong's face was lowered, the holy emperor's voice echoing in his ears, neither loud nor soft, imbued with the majestic might of the heavens. Beneath the imperial stairway, King Qi's head lowered even further, his body trembling even more violently. Wang Chong. The holy emperor's gaze quickly fell on Wang Chong. In the War of the Southwest, you volunteered to lead the army to defeat the Mengshi, Yusang army, protecting the empire and the safety of the people of the Southwest. We are very happy that you have such a heart to serve your country. The Wang clan is truly a loyal clan of my Tang dynasty. We are very happy that Duke Jiu has a son like you. All was quiet in front of Taiji Palace. Many people revealed looks of envy at these words. The sage emperor's words were an extremely high evaluation of the entire Wang clan. This was a great honor for them. Just these words alone could protect the clan for several decades, and they could even serve as a shadow for future generations. Even if the clan declined, and its descendants were unfilial, they would still be able to live a dignified life. Chonger, you are winning honor for our entire Wang clan. Wang Jin clearly understood the weight of these words, and his face turned red from excitement. In his decades as an official, today could be said to be the happiest day of his life. Wang Chong would not dare. This has always been the work of General Xinyu and the soldiers of the Southwest. Wang Chong is only doing his duty. Chapter 652. Merit will be rewarded, and mistakes will be punished. There is no need for you to be humble. The earth trembled as the holy emperor's authoritative voice resounded in every corner of the royal palace. Wang Chong, you still don't have a courtesy name, right? Wang. Hearing the holy emperor's words, the officials on the viewing platform were in an uproar. Many of them raised their heads to look at the lofty Taiji Palace, and the godlike figure on it, vaguely sensing something. Yes, this humble subject is only 17 this year, and has not taken the scholarly examinations. As such, I have not been bestowed a courtesy name by my elders. Wang Chong said gravely, the courtesy names bestowed by the Tang dynasty were not given to oneself. Only those of virtue and prestige could bestow a courtesy name. These people were either extremely talented, or of illustrious status. As such, the vast majority of people only had a name, but not a courtesy name. The holy emperor was of the same generation as Wang Chong's grandfather. Although he was not as old as Wang Chong's grandfather, he was still more than 50 years old, even older than Wang Chong's big uncle. In this aspect, he could indeed be considered as Wang Chong's elder. Wang. The crowd grew even more restless. Many people had vaguely guessed something, but they still did not dare to believe it. However, this doubt did not last for long. Very soon, everyone's guess was confirmed. Very good. Since that is the case, we will bestow you a courtesy name. Everyone was dumbfounded by the sage emperor's words. Beneath the imperial stairway, King Qi's teeth were clenched so tightly that they almost shattered. A courtesy name. The holy emperor was actually going to bestow a courtesy name on Wang Chong? Since ancient times, there had been emperors who bestowed surnames on their officials, but there had never been a single emperor who bestowed a courtesy name on their officials. His Majesty wishes to accept Wang Chong as the son of heaven's disciple? On the viewing platform, Yao Guangyi was at a loss. Having been taught by the old master for decades, Yao Guangyi had always been a calm and patient person. However, when he heard that the holy emperor was going to bestow a courtesy name on Wang Chong, he could not help but lose his composure. Conferred the title of marquis, conferred the title of nobility, bestowed a courtesy name. Despite the great contributions the Yao clan had made back then, they had never enjoyed such a grand favor from the Son of Heaven. Not only had the Holy Emperor created the title of Young Marquis for Wang Chong, but he was also going to bestow upon him a courtesy name, setting a precedent for an emperor to bestow a courtesy name. Just how heavy was this favor? This was an honor that Yao Guangyi had never dared to dream of. Furthermore, the Holy Emperor is giving him a death exemption medallion. Yao Guangyi's face was incomparably pale. In the history of the Tang dynasty, there were not many people like Wang Chong, who could turn the tide of a desperate crisis and turn defeat into victory, saving nearly 1 million people. But it was not unheard of. The war god of the Tang dynasty, Wang Zhongxi, the famous general of Taizong's era, and the war god So Yong-sun had all performed such magnificent feats. But no one had ever received such a grand reward like Wang Chong. Yao Guangyi could not understand why the Holy Emperor seemed to favor Wang Chong so much. Clang! With a clear clang and a flash of golden light, the Holy Emperor took out the golden sword of the Son of Heaven from his waist and hovered it over Wang Chong's head. Rumble! The moment the Holy Emperor took out his sword, a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. With the Taiji Palace at the center, a spatial crack appeared, cleaving the thick clouds in two. Golden sunlight sprinkled down from the sky, accurately falling upon the Holy Emperor, Wang Chong, and the majestic Taiji Palace behind them. The dignified and divine voice of the Holy Emperor resounded from every corner of the imperial palace. The War of the Southwest began at the Arai, the starting point of everything you have done. A Kuan swimming in the water is a Kuan, soaring in the sky is a Peng. We will bestow upon you the courtesy name Kuan Peng. We hope that you will not only swim in the water, but also soar in the sky. Like the Kuan Peng of the heavens and earth, you will become a loyal subject of my Tang dynasty. At this moment, no one knew that the Holy Emperor's voice was not only resounding in the imperial palace, but also resounding in the ears of everyone in the capital. The usually bustling capital was now deathly silent. Clap! In a restaurant in the western part of the city, a man wearing a black cloak sat alone in a corner, silently drinking wine. Upon hearing this voice, he snapped the chopsticks in his hand. Many thanks, Your Majesty. At this moment, Wang Chong had no idea what was happening outside. Upon hearing that the Holy Emperor had bestowed upon him the courtesy name Kuan Peng, Wang Chong respectfully bowed. As someone who had lived 2 lives, Wang Chong had only met the Holy Emperor twice, and both times had been in this life. But even so, Wang Chong was brimming with respect for this supreme existence of the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains. This was an emperor who had dedicated his entire life to the Tang dynasty, who had striven forward and swept away the barbarians, who had expanded the territory and influence of the Central Plains to the limit, and who had personally created the golden age of the Tang dynasty. No matter what, he was worthy of anyone's respect and following. Clang! A majestic golden light flashed through the air. The golden Son of Heaven soared in the Holy Emperor's hand, swayed in the air, and then returned to the sheath at his waist, all the phenomena vanishing. Wang Kuanpeng. At this moment, Wang Chong finally had his first courtesy name, and it had been bestowed by the Son of Heaven. This was a true disciple of the Son of Heaven. With the Holy Emperor's bestowal, Wang Chong's conferring ceremony came to an end amidst grand cheers. In stark contrast to the bustling celebration in the capital of the Tang dynasty, the current Uzun Plateau was a completely different scene. The corpses of cows and sheep were piled up, scattered across the plateau. The cows and sheep that had been lively not too long ago were now lying on the ground, their eyes wide open as they turned into corpses. Countless flies buzzed about, gathering around the corpses like dark clouds. Vultures would occasionally pierce through the clouds, their sharp claws piercing into the rotting corpses of the cows and sheep. The vultures warily glanced at the mastiffs nearby, then began to peck at the corpses, as if there was no one else around. However, this was only a feast for scavengers. For humans, these former food had become extremely dangerous. The stench could be smelled even from several li away, and it was no longer suitable for human consumption. This was an unprecedented plague. The once mighty Uzun Empire was now plunged into a severe food crisis. The War of the Southwest had ended, but the damage this war had inflicted on the Uzun Empire was still far from beginning to end. The plague that Wang Chong had sent Li Sai to spread on the plateau was still spreading from the territory of the Ngari royal lineage all the way to the royal capital. The fires continued to burn day and night, and the smoke from the burning cows and sheep soared into the sky, not dissipating for a long time. This was the only solution that the Prime Minister of the Uzun Empire Dalen Trinling, had come up with in this crisis. Only the Tang dynasty had the secret cure for the sheep plague. Treating it was already impossible, so the only solution was to prevent it. Burning the cows and sheep to prevent the plague from spreading was the only solution that the 5 ministers of the 4th district of the Uzun Empire had come up with. But compared to the plague, the War of the Southwest was the focus of the entire Uzun Empire. After all, this was the source of everything. 200,000 Uzun cavalry had marched east, but in the end, only 10,000 had survived. The entire Ngari royal lineage had basically been crippled, whether it was the deaths of more than 200,000 warriors or the sheep plague that affected the entire Uzun plateau. All of them could not escape a single name. Wang Chong. Daluan Ruozan, you have truly disappointed this king. This king believed in your strength, so I sent you to the Ngari royal lineage to assist the 4th prince. In the War of the Southwest, you said that you wanted to form an alliance with Mengshi Zhao to drive the tiger to swallow the wolf. And this king agreed to everything. But look at what you've done. The royal capital of Yusang was dimly lit. Giant prayer wheels forged from gold were tinkling as they spun. Not far from these prayer wheels, pieces of ambergris wood were tossed into simple and crude bronze incense tripods, causing fragrant smoke to rise from them. The smoke shrouded the entire great hall of the royal capital, making everything seem illusory and unreal. Through the smoke, one could see a figure wearing a loose white robe kneeling on the ground, his face turned downward. If one looked carefully, one would realize that this was the Prime Minister of the Ngari, who had been defeated by Wang Chong in the War of the Southwest, Daluan Ruozan. The defeat in the Southwest had resulted in grievous casualties and rampant plague. Tens of thousands of Uzun shepherds were living in dire straits. The Tsempo was enraged and immediately issued an order summoning Daluan Ruozan to the royal capital for questioning. Your Majesty, this lowly subject has nothing to say. Daluan Ruozan remained kneeling on the ground, making no attempt to refute the Tsempo. Bastard! The Tsempo was enraged by these words. He had lost more than 200,000 elite cavalry and caused a massive sheep plague. But Daluan Ruozan's reply was that he had nothing to say. How could the Tsempo endure this? Someone, strip him of his position and imprison him to await this king's punishment. The Tsempo's furious voice was like a peal of thunder, audible even from several li away. In the hall, a bitter smile appeared on Daluan Ruozan's lips. He had long ago anticipated how he would be punished upon entering the royal capital. As the Prime Minister of the Ngari royal lineage, as well as the Commander-in-Chief of the entire War of the Southwest, he could hardly escape the blame for this defeat. Any punishment would not be excessive. I wholeheartedly accept my loss in this battle. Daluan Ruozan kneeled on the ground, his mind recalling the distant capital of the Tang dynasty, that 17-year-old youth who had been receiving a reward. That war in the southwest of the Tang dynasty had been long and drawn out. He had used all his methods, but in the end, he had still been no match for that youth. What else could he say? If one was willing to bet, one had to be willing to lose. Bang! The door to the hall opened. Amidst the rising green mist, a few warriors of the capital wearing heavy bronze armor strode in. These warriors of the royal capital had muscular bodies and thick arms and legs. As they scanned the hall, their gazes quickly fell on the nearby Daluan Ruozan. The guards of the royal capital were elites that only the Tsempo could mobilize. All of them had been handpicked from thousands and were extremely powerful. Normally, they would only move out when the Tsempo needed something, and the vast majority of the time, it was not something good. Wait a moment. Just as the guards of the royal capital strode toward Daluan Ruozan, a figure shrouded in smoke suddenly spoke to the Tsempo's side. Your Majesty, may I ask a few questions? This person suddenly left his seat and walked over from behind the table. As the smoke scattered, one could see that this man had a mustache and fair skin. He exuded an aura that was somewhat similar to Daluan Ruozan's, but he was more composed and steady than Daluan Ruozan, and his eyes were sharper and wiser. In the entire Uzun Empire, the only person who dared to act so boldly in front of the Tsempo was the head of the 5 ministers, the Prime Minister of the Empire, Dalen Trinling. Although he was the head of the 5 ministers, Dalen Trinling was actually a little younger than Daluan Ruozan. But even so, when Dalen Trinling spoke, the Tsimpo, the two royal capital guards, and even the prime minister of the Ngari royal lineage, and Daluan Ruozan, all revealed expressions of respect. In the Uzan Empire, there was only one person who could reign supreme through his wisdom, and whose words even the Tsimpo had to respect. Dalen Trinling was an honorific that conveyed the meaning of prime minister. In this aspect, Daluan Ruozan could not compare. Chapter 653. Prime Minister, if you have any questions, please speak. The Tsimpo, who had been enraged just a moment ago, seemed to become a different person the moment Dalen Trinling walked out. His expression became amiable, his attitude much better. After saying this, the Tsimpo glared at the two royal capital guards. The two of you withdraw for me. Yes. The two royal capital guards quickly withdrew from the hall and closed the door. The Holy Emperor of the Tang dynasty is currently rewarding that youngest son of the Wang clan. Do you know of this matter? Dalen Trinling's eyes were like needles as he took 2 steps forward and stared at Daluan Ruozan, suddenly getting straight to the point. Buzz! Daluan Ruozan's mind trembled at these words, and he raised his head. The Holy Emperor of the Tang dynasty had rewarded Wang Chong. Daluan Ruozan was keenly aware of what these words represented. The Uzan Empire had suffered today's crushing defeat entirely because of that 17-year-old Tang dynasty youth, Wang Chong. Now that the Holy Emperor was heavily rewarding Wang Chong, that youngest son of the Wang clan would play an increasingly important role in the Tang dynasty and pose an even greater threat to the Uzan Empire. Very good. It seems like you've also sensed it. The War of the Southwest is over. No matter how many soldiers of the Ngari royal lineage died, or how vast the plague was, it's all in the past. War is bound to have death and a price. In the wars we fought against the Tang dynasty, we suffered even greater crushing defeats. But even so, it's not like we've come out empty-handed. At the very least, we know a name. Wang Chong, no? Dalen Trinling coldly snorted, his sharp eyes flashing with a light as cold as the edge of a blade. Not even the green smoke in the hall could block it. Daluan Ruozan was shocked, and quickly bowed his head in submission. Victory and defeat are common in war. No matter how much we have paid this time, the Tang dynasty will pay an even heavier price for this in the future. But before that, why don't you tell us about Wang Chong? Ruozan understands. Green smoke rose in spirals, and only Daluan Ruozan's voice could be heard in the entire hall. Your Majesty, Prime Minister, in the War of the Southwest, the Empire suffered a major defeat, and Ruozan cannot escape the blame. No matter what kind of punishment, I am willing to accept it. But that youngest son of the Wang family, if it was really as the Prime Minister said, that he was valued by the Holy Emperor of the Tang dynasty, then in the future, this person would definitely become a thorn in the side of the entire Uzan. Even when the battle was at its most dangerous and intense, when the Tang army was on the verge of being completely destroyed, he never stopped giving orders, never once panicked. Moreover, he doesn't stick to a single pattern in the art of war, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. More importantly, although he is only 17, he has far-reaching plans, and is vicious and merciless. The sheep plague this time was single-handedly caused by him. He's only 17, but he already has such thoughts and methods. I'm only afraid that in the future, once he matures, the events of the royal capital will repeat themselves. Daluan Ruozan's final words resounded through the hall, causing a massive tremor to ripple through the hall. Whether it was the Prime Minister, Dalen Trinling, or the Supreme Tsimpo seated in the back of the hall, seated in the Uzan Empire, all of them had expressions of shock on their faces. Even the Uzan Prime Minister, Dalen Trinling, who had initiated this inquiry, had never expected that Daluan Ruozan would have such a high evaluation of the youngest son of the Wang family. The events of the royal capital, all the people of Uzan understood the meaning of these words. Uzan had a natural stronghold to defend. The enormous difference in altitude and the thin air were the best natural strongholds of the Uzan Empire. All the foreign soldiers that entered this place would be greatly restricted in strength. Only the people of Uzan, who lived in this part of the world, would be unaffected. Thus, the people of Uzun called themselves the chosen of the heavens. But it wasn't as if the Uzun had never suffered a crushing defeat in its history. At the very least, in the last 100-some years, the royal capital of Uzun had been breached twice. The first time had been by the war god of the Tang dynasty, So Yung-sun, during the reign of Emperor Taizong. The second time had been 23 years ago, when the war god of the Tang dynasty, the current junior guardian of the crown prince, Wang Zhongxi, had not broken into the royal capital, but at that time, the entire royal capital was no different from being breached. This was because all the ministers, the Tsempo, and everyone else in the royal capital had already retreated 1,000 li from the royal capital. The royal capital that was left behind was just an empty city. It was precisely because Wang Zhongxi saw that it was an empty city that he had retreated his army. But that unstoppable edge from that year, the widespread tremors and panic that had been unleashed on the plateau, made it so that even now, when all the people of Uzun heard Wang Zhongxi's name, they would feel a deep fear. In the War of the Southwest, the entire Ngari royal lineage had basically been wiped out. But this was only a local war. And the Uzun Empire had 4 royal districts and a royal capital, so the losses suffered by the Ngari royal lineage were not much to the entire Uzun Empire. The true impact was still the sheep plague. But based on Dalawan Ruozen's words, this Wang Chong actually had the ability to repeat the events of the past and attack the entire Uzun royal capital. This was an extremely high evaluation. This was especially true when one considered that in the last few decades, the Uzun Empire had worked hard to build up its empire. It had learned the forging skills of the Tang dynasty, purchased large quantities of refined iron and weapons, and also raised large numbers of war horses and trained elite cavalry. Dalawan Ruozen's evaluation was even more inconceivable now. Prime Minister, Your Majesty, this sinful subject presides over the Ngari royal lineage and has seen no small number of famous ministers and generals of the Tang dynasty, including the current Minister of War of the Tang dynasty, Zhangqiu Jinxiong, and Longshi's Geshuhan. But none of them makes me feel as threatened as that youngest son of the Wang clan. This lowly subject recommends that no matter what, no matter the price, that youngest son of the Wang clan must be eliminated. Dalawan Ruozen spoke these last words with incomparable sincerity. The generals and ministers of the 4 royal lineages could not casually enter the royal capital without orders. Dalawan Ruozen was well aware that this was his only and last chance to convince the Tsempo and the Prime Minister. I know what to do about this matter. Dalen Trinling stared into Dalawan Ruozen's eyes for a long time, and then slowly closed them. Smoke curled up, obscuring his body. And on the wise and far-sighted face of the Prime Minister of the Empire, some sort of decision had already appeared. The Prime Minister of the Empire and the Prime Minister of the Royal District were both renowned for their intelligence. Sometimes, a few short sentences were enough to explain many problems. It truly is a divine mountain. At the same time, while the Great Hall of the Uzun Empire's royal capital was plunged into silence, in the distant southwest of the Tang dynasty, a middle-aged man with a slender face and a shrewd temperament was standing at the base of the mountain, holding an oil paper umbrella embroidered with white pear blossoms. In front of him was the place where Wang Chong had led the 100,000 Annam Protectorate soldiers in a desperate battle to defeat the 500,000 Mengshi, Yusang army. This nameless mountain in the southwest of the Tang dynasty had gained a new name after the Southwest War. God of Heaven. It had already become the mountain of destiny for the Southwest. There were far too many inconceivable events in the Southwest War. An army of 100,000 had actually defeated the 500,000 Mengshi, Yusang army, and even killed 400,000 Mengshi, Yusang soldiers. At the most crucial moment of the war, when the 100,000 Tang dynasty soldiers were in danger of a water source, this sparsely forested mountain had actually dug out a water source. If not for the protection of the gods, what other explanation could there be? Thus in the southwest, this was a divine mountain. And that youth from the Wang clan, who had commanded the 100,000 soldiers on the summit of this mountain, who had cheerfully and confidently annihilated the 500,000 Mengshi, Yusang soldiers and protected the nearly 1 million civilians of the southwest, was naturally the incarnation of the gods, perhaps even the son of the god, because he was the only one who could summon the almighty heavenly god. The mountain was a scene of devastation. After that fierce battle, its surface was covered in holes, the scars of explosions and fierce battles visible in many places. In many places, even the yellow-brown soil had turned a reddish-brown. In some of the low-lying areas, one could even see some dried purple things, which were congealed blood clots. The slender middle-aged man closed his eyes and took a deep breath. As he smelled the thick stench of blood that still lingered in the air, not only did the man not show the slightest disgust, a hint of intoxication appeared on his face. To some people, war was a plague of snakes and scorpions that could not be avoided at all costs. But for some others, it was the best nourishment. War was the paradise of those warriors who truly desired war. It was the most beautiful scenery there was. The moment when life began to wither away was the most beautiful scenery. The middle-aged man's eyes were tightly shut as he faced the divine mountain, imagining the hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the three sides charging forward one after another, falling like weeds. The intoxication on his face grew deeper and deeper. Truly beautiful. The middle-aged man gave a deep sigh. The arrival of the king of Song of the Tang dynasty had completely altered the situation in the southwest. All the Annam Protectorate forces had left with the king of Song, heading for the border between the Tang dynasty and Mengshi Zhao. Right now there was not a single person on the Mountain of God. Your Highness, the people of the Annam Protectorate might still come here to patrol. We should hurry. Don't forget, His Majesty has specifically instructed us. We must find out the truth behind the crushing defeat of Mengshi, Yusang. Not far away, another man spoke. Although he was dressed like a common merchant on the Tea-Horse Road in the southwest, the man's taut muscles under his robe, his straight body, his vigilant gaze that constantly observed his surroundings, and the long bag wrapped in white cloth on his waist, all of these things spoke volumes about his identity. This was an extremely valiant martial artist, and not an ordinary one at that. Only one kind of person would have such a straight back, and that was a soldier. Ha! What's there to be afraid of? The Southwestern War is over, and the Tang people's attention is now focused on the border of the Arai. If there's nothing important, why would they come here? The slender middle-aged man held up his white pear blossom umbrella. His expression relaxed as he heartily laughed. Chapter 654. Goguryu's King Michin was a target on Zhang Shogui's list of must-kill targets in Yuzhou. Many wars had been thwarted by this King Michin. Unlike the other kings, King Michin had 4 sabers on him, but when facing an enemy, he would only use one. In battle he would use 2, or at least 3. Up until now, no one had been able to force him to use all 3 sabers. King Michin was cruel and bloodthirsty, completely different from the spy king King Sojurim, who liked to conceal himself. On the intense battlefield, he was the craziest of machines. The more he killed, the stronger he became, and the more immersed he became. It was said that he had another hobby, which was to use human blood to brew fine wine and gulp it down. Moreover, King Michin never cared about the life or death of his own people. He only enjoyed one thing: fierce and frenzied battles, and the thick stench of death on the battlefield. The Chuan in King Michin did not refer to a river, but to the unbridled flood of blood. In the War of the Southwest, more than 400,000 Mengshi, Yusang soldiers had died, and more than 100,000 Tang dynasty soldiers had died. King Michin had heard of this matter, so he had taken the initiative to invite Qi into the interior of the Tang dynasty to personally investigate the southwest battlefield. Moreover, who says that I haven't investigated His Majesty's request? King Michin closed his eyes and raised his nose in an intoxicated manner, sniffing the air. Suddenly, he leaped into the air like a ghost. In the next moment, he had already appeared at the peak of the mountain, in the southeast position. Ha ha ha, what a thick stench of blood. I've only smelled one person on the entire battlefield. This was a slaughter to my heart's content. How many people did this one person kill? 5,000, 6,000, no, 11,087. Truly formidable. King Michin raised his head and madly laughed. If Wang Chong were here, he would assuredly be stunned. Because the place King Michin was talking about was precisely where the southeast line had been broken, where he had single-handedly killed more than 10,000 Mengshi, Yusang soldiers. The battle was already over, and even the corpses had been buried. But King Michin had only taken a sniff to know the true number of people Wang Chong had killed. Perhaps even Wang Chong himself didn't know this. "My lord, do you mean that someone killed 10,000 people here?" A figure flew over from behind and landed beside King Michin. He looked around at the empty surroundings with an alarmed expression. "Ha ha ha, this is a kindred spirit. Unbelievable stamina and unbelievable inner strength. There's also an unbelievable battle intent and killing intent." King Michin ignored the guards behind him, his voice growing more and more excited. "That's right, I also smell a very unique smell of blood. It's restless, like the blood of burning flames." With these last words, King Michin seemed to come to his senses, but soon, an even more playful smile appeared on his face. "I heard that the Wang clan in the capital of the Tang dynasty has a tradition of berserker syndrome. When the berserker syndrome flared up, his blood would boil, and he would go berserk, unable to differentiate between friend and foe. Is this berserker syndrome?" King Michin was getting even more excited. "I didn't think that I would have the fortune to smell the blood of a berserker syndrome martial artist. What a beautiful description. This is the true blood of slaughter. His stamina is so long that he can kill 10,000 people. How wonderful would it be if I could obtain this bloodline? But it's rumored that the berserker syndrome is passed down from generation to generation, and there is only one person in each generation. The successor of this generation of the Wang clan is called Wang Bei, and he is currently imprisoned in the imperial prison. How could someone with the berserker syndrome appear here?" King Michin's smile faded, and he narrowed his eyes pensively. After a few moments, he suddenly understood and began to chuckle. "Tulin, you're in for a treat this time. Send word to His Majesty that we've discovered that the youngest son of the Wang clan also has the berserker syndrome. 2 people with the berserker syndrome have appeared in 1 generation. Interesting, interesting." Behind him, the Gogrian warrior called Tulin was dumbfounded. King Michin's voice continued to echo in his ears. "However, the berserker syndrome is said to be able to warp a person's will, making it impossible to distinguish between friend and foe. This youngest son of the Wang clan seems to be constantly killing, but the ones he's killing are Mengshi Zhao and Uzun's men. This kind of control is truly astonishing. As the saying went, the slightest error could lead to a great disparity. Although the berserker syndrome was powerful and could greatly enhance a martial artist's strength, once it went out of control, the ones who would die under Wang Chong's sword in the War of the Southwest would be the 10,000 Annam Protectorate warriors. The sword could kill, but it could also harm oneself. But throughout the entire campaign, King Michin had not smelled the blood of any Annam Protectorate warrior. This level of control was not something anyone could achieve. What a troublesome character. King Michin muttered to himself, his pupils constricting. For the first time, a troubled look appeared in his eyes. How infuriating. He can clearly kill people like scything flax, so why control him? Undisguised envy appeared on King Michin's face. If he had such a powerful bloodline ability, it would be a match made in heaven. Alas, this brat clearly had such a powerful strength, but he still insisted on controlling it. This made King Michin, who loved to kill, extremely unhappy. Buzz! As he was speaking, his mind suddenly trembled as a powerful energy appeared in King Michin's senses. King Michin's voice came to a halt as he turned to the corner of the mountain, where he had sensed the source of the energy. At the foot of the mountain, not far away, there were a few figures dressed in black, looking like merchants. They had their heads down and were looking at something on the ground. The leader of this group also sensed something and raised his head to glance in King Michin's direction. Their gazes clashed in the air, and then, as if they had been electrocuted, they both drew back their gazes as if nothing had happened. It seems like the Turks have also come. King Michin coldly sneered. Although he was very far away, the moment that person raised his head, he had immediately noticed that high-nose bridge. Although the terrain of Yuzhou to the northeast of the Tang dynasty was complex, with the Eastern Turks, the Khitans, the Shi, the Tang dynasty and Goguryeo all tangled together. From a certain perspective, the Goguryeo Empire and the other three powers besides the Tang dynasty were natural allies. But in private, all of them looked down on each other. King Michin was no exception. "Your Highness, should we greet them?" The Goguryeo warrior called Tulin asked. What need is there to greet them? And besides, do you think you can fight them?" King Michin stood at the summit of the mountain, taking in all the surrounding scenery. As far as the eye could see, there was far more than a single faction around the Mountain of God. The Goguryans, the Turks, the people of the western regions, the Arabs, the Karak-Spazinu, all sorts of people, disguised as people of all sorts, were gathering here. In the War of the Southwest, 200,000 Tang soldiers had fought against 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army. They had first lost and then won, killing more than 400,000 soldiers. This war had not only altered the structure of the Southwest, it had also altered the relationship between the Tang dynasty and all the surrounding factions. Upon hearing the news of the defeat of the Mengshi, Yusang army, all the restless factions around the Tang dynasty began to retreat, fleeing far away. To Mengshi, Zhao and Uzun, this war was a lost opportunity to occupy the southwest of the Tang dynasty. And to the other factions around the Tang dynasty, they had lost an excellent opportunity to join hands and pry open the Tang dynasty's supremacy that had lasted for centuries. A centipede could die, but it would not fall. Although the Tang dynasty had declined and was no longer what it had been, the edge displayed by its army was still as fierce and terrifying as ever. "Lord Yabgu, it's the Goguryans." At the base of the mountain, a Turkic merchant whispered, "It's King Michin." The Turkic leader was half kneeling on the ground as he scanned his surroundings. The Eastern Turks shared a border with Goguryeo and the Tang dynasty, and they often interacted with each other. King Michin was famous for his frenzied slaughter, and his aura could be clearly recognized even from several li away. It was useless to disguise himself. Moreover, the Goguryans' twin sabers and tri-sabers were extremely easy to recognize. Wrapped in white cloth, they were all the more conspicuous to people outside the Tang dynasty. Don't worry about them. Time is limited. Once too many people gather, they'll quickly attract the attention of the Tang dynasty. The Turkic leader said. It was very difficult to imagine that a simple scouting mission would require the Eastern Turks to dispatch a Yabgu, but this matter was far too important to the Eastern Turks. The Tang dynasty had actually produced a supreme commander who could fight one against two, win against many while simultaneously defeating Daluan Ruozan and Duan Gichuan. Ordinary scouts and spies would never be able to see through such an important matter. Only those with vast experience and intelligence on the battlefield would be able to see some clues. And there was another important matter. Just how had the Mengshi, Yusang army lost in the War of the Southwest? Even now, none of the factions bordering the Tang dynasty, including the Eastern and Western Turks, had been able to figure this out. Daluan Ruozan, Hueshu Wuzong, and Duan Gichuan were all famed generals of the present age. With these three leading the army, and possessing an absolute advantage in numbers, they should have never lost. This matter was like a riddle that deeply haunted the minds of everyone. This was also why the factions bordering the Tang dynasty had chosen to send people to investigate more than a month after the conclusion of the war. "Let's go." The black-robed Yabgu quickly stood up and led his men in a different direction. After around half an incense stick of time, the Eastern Turks had explored the entire mountain range and finally stopped in front of a massive pit. This is where Mengshi Zhao Emperor Jelifeng was heavily injured. The Yabgu knelt by the edge of the hole, touched the edge of the hole, and then raised his head to look around. Chapter 655. The Yabgu closed his eyes, and in an instant, a completely different image appeared in his mind. It was still the same mountain, but now there were countless soldiers, all of them wearing different armor. It was clear that they belonged to three different factions. All of them were madly fighting on the mountain, and in the middle of the soldiers, the black-clothed Yabgu suddenly saw four massive giants. And in front of these four giants was a massive figure covered in golden light that was striding toward them. If the experts of the three sides who had participated in the Southwestern War were here and saw the picture in the Yabgu's mind, they would assuredly be stunned. This was because this Yabgu was clearly replaying the scene of the battle in his mind. Those gouges in the ground were a vivid representation of what had happened. In all of the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates, only the ghost eye Yabgu could do this. I understand. This is where Jelifeng fell. The ghost eye Yabgu suddenly said as he looked forward. Wang Yin and Xinyu Zhongtong, two experts working together. One is the mighty miracle god, the other the Vajra god. No wonder Jelifeng was heavily injured. He was too careless. But Jelifeng is also a wise ruler. For him to have made Mengshi Zhao so powerful, he's no ordinary person. How could he have been completely unprepared? This shouldn't have happened. An Eastern Turkic general behind the ghost eye Yabgu frowned, his face fraught with confusion. The ghost eye Yabgu fell silent. In truth, when he heard that they had lost the southwest, and that Jelifeng was heavily injured, and his condition was unknown, he had also found it rather strange. As a sovereign, one had to stand guard in the rear and not lightly take risks. This was the most basic principle on the battlefield. With Jelifeng standing guard in the rear, he logically shouldn't have been injured. This was something he could not understand no matter how he thought about it. The ghost eye Yabgu suspiciously scanned the surroundings, and when he passed over the summit, he seemed to notice something and stopped. It's not that he wasn't cautious, but that someone was baiting him. This brat named Wang Chong has a deep mind. Jelifeng is completely toyed with by him. Ghost eye Yabgu sighed deeply. Although more than a month had passed since the battle, there were no secrets that could be hidden from him. It was as if he could see Jelifeng burning with rage, and suddenly saw a figure standing at the top of the mountain laughing at him. It was that ridicule that made Jelifeng completely lose her mind. Wang Chong was a name that was completely unfamiliar to the Turks who grazed the steppe beyond the Great Wall. They had never heard of this name before, but today, whether it was the Tang dynasty or the countries beyond the Great Wall, everyone had heard of this name. It was impossible for them not to know this name. A person who could defeat Daluan Ruozan and Huishu Wuzong, killing hundreds of thousands of Mengshi, Yusang soldiers, was someone no faction could ignore. Especially considering that they didn't have any information about him before. It was very important to collect information about him. This was not something an ordinary low-level scout could do. It was not strange for all the factions to send important people to investigate. But Jelifeng is no fool. How could that Wang Chong be so sure that his strategy would work? The Turkic general behind him said in confusion. Ha! After thinking for a few moments, the ghost eye Yabgu suddenly laughed. Is the first intelligence report from the southwest still there? Let me see it. It is, my lord. The Turkic general behind Wang Chong quickly handed over a Turkic letter. Haha, as expected. The ghost eye Yabgu lowered his head to read for a few moments, then nodded and began to laugh. The news back then said that the rear of Mengshi Zhao was covered in thick smoke, that the granaries had been attacked, and that all the provisions had been destroyed. Mengshi Zhao's army of several 100,000 was no small number, and the cost of feeding the horses and men was no small number. Moreover, Jelifeng was still very ambitious. He wanted to use the southwest as a springboard for an even greater scheme. Millions of tons of provisions were burned, and Jelifeng's ambitions of several decades were all for naught. This is the true reason why Jelifeng lost his rationality. The ghost eye Yabgu gave a deep sigh, his eyes brimming with deep admiration and apprehension. If the battle hadn't been at its most intense, Jelifeng would have had people at his side. If Duan Gichuan hadn't entered the field, he would have definitely stopped him. If not for the pressure exerted by the 100,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate, drawing away so many of the soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army, the granaries wouldn't have so few soldiers. Regardless of the reason, as long as one link was missing, that brat would never have been able to provoke Jelifeng, and this battle might have had a completely different conclusion. He was on the summit to draw away Jelifeng, and then he had Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong's god form ambush him from the side. All of his plans were closely linked. Of all the famed generals in the world and all the battles I've fought, I've never seen an opponent with such a deep and far-sighted mind. Truly a terrifying opponent. It's truly hard to believe that he's only 17. The intelligence reports the Eastern Turks had only mentioned that Wang Chong was a godly commander, but the ghost Yabgu was able to gather far more information through his on-the-spot investigations. The ghost Yabgu could completely imagine that this youth of the Tang dynasty, whom he had never met, had already planned out all the steps at the start of the operation. The Lion City by the Arai, the steel walls of the Mount of God, the sheep plague on the Uzun Plateau, and the burning granaries in the rear of Mengshi Zhao. All of these plans have been linked to each other, each thread perfectly linked and flawless. Just thinking about it made the ghost Yabgu feel his scalp go numb, his forehead drenched in cold sweat, while Daluan Ruozan and Duan Gichuan's gazes were still limited to the battlefield before them. That 17-year-old youth had already cast his gaze over the entire world, and it seemed like nothing could stop him. Such thoughts and schemes were enough to make one tremble in fear. Daluan Ruozan and Duan Gichuan's loss to him was not the slightest bit shameful. In truth, the ghost Yabgu even rejoiced that this battle had taken place in the southeast and not the northwest. The ones facing that youth were Daluan Ruozan and Duan Gichuan, not him, or the Eastern Turkic Khaganate behind him. Tell the Khagan to speed up the collection of information on that Wang Chong. We must pay attention to his every move. If possible, do your best to kill him, but we can't let him associate it with us. Yes, Lord Yabgu. As the battlefield between the Mengshi, Yusang and the Tang dynasty, this Mount of God in the southwest was an insurmountable hurdle for many factions. At this moment, it was not just the Eastern and Western Turks and Gogurians that had come to investigate this place. In another part of the Mount of God, several Hu merchants with profound gazes had gathered together. The Tang dynasty had an open and tolerant attitude toward its friends and neighbors from all over the world. All the Hu merchants who had been rejected before were now permitted to enter the Tang dynasty's capital, and even the interior. To the people of the Tang dynasty, even seeing a few Hu in the interior was nothing strange. But the deep green eyes of these people revealed their true identity. They were actually a group of Arabs. To the Hu, the Arabs were very different from them, and could be recognized at a glance. But to the people of the Tang dynasty, it was impossible to tell the difference between the Hu and the Arabs. They all looked the same. Found it! An Arab suddenly called out in Arabic, a language no one else could understand. At the base of the mountain, the Arabs had finally found what they were looking for. It was a piece of armor. Although the Annam Protectorate had already cleaned up the battlefield, it was simply impossible to clean up such a large area with hundreds of thousands of corpses. There were bound to be a few fish that had slipped through the net. What a smooth cut! What a sharp sword! An Arab picked up the two pieces of armor and raised them high into the air, squinting as he examined them. This was a piece of pauldron, and it had been made from plate armor. One could feel that the pauldron was very thick and very heavy. The armor made by the Uzun was so crude that even the Arabs deeply disdained it, but the Uzun were so focused on forging that even though their armor was crude, it was still of an extremely high level. Although it was heavy, it was extremely sturdy and durable. Even with the sharpness of the Arab weapons, this kind of armor was still a headache to deal with. But this was not the reason they had appeared here. At this moment, all the Arabs were focused on the cut in the center of the two pieces of pauldron. So smooth, so sharp, just like a mirror. Is this the Wuxia steel sword created by the Tang dynasty? The Arabs stared at the pieces of pauldron in the air, their eyes shining with a feverish light that made one's hair stand on end. Compared to the other empires bordering the Tang dynasty, the Arabs were actually far less enthusiastic. To them, there was one thing that was even more important than this war: the Wuxia steel weapon. In this war, a small piece of news that wasn't too important to others had attracted the attention of the entire Arabian Empire. A small army of around 1,000 soldiers, equipped with Wuxia steel weapons. In a head-on clash, they had defeated the Uzun cavalry 10 times their number, and they had been unstoppable. In the final stages of the war, they had dealt a massive blow to the Mengshi, Yusang army. In the Arabian Empire, which specialized in smithing and focused on quality and lethality, this news had caused a massive stir. It had to be realized that this was just 1,000 weapons, and the ones using these weapons were the Tang dynasty, who were not very skilled in cavalry. If the Arabs had such sharp weapons, even if it was just 10,000, the Arabs, who were stronger than the Uzan, would have been able to dominate the battlefield. Impossible. Such a thick plate armor was actually cut open like a piece of paper. That's right. Although our smithing skills are superior to those of the Tang dynasty, we don't have a single weapon that can do this. To think that Hyderabad's iron ore would be so terrifying. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have never believed it. Alas, the smiths of the empire have already tried all sorts of methods, but none of them have been able to reach this level. I really don't know how that Tang dynasty man Wang Chong managed to do it. The combat ability of the Wuxia steel weapon has already been proven. No matter what, we have to think of a way to obtain it. No matter the price. The men stared at the smooth cut on the plate armor, their eyes burning with passion. No matter what the Arabs had been like in the past, from today onwards, all the Arabs, including the Arab smiths, knew the name of an inconceivable youth of the Tang dynasty. Wang Chong. This was the true god of smithing. Chapter 656. The Western regions, the Karak Spazinu, one faction after another began to appear around the mountain range. But these Huan foreigners were far from the only ones paying attention to this war. Zhang Shaoxi, Foman Linta, Geshu Han, Gao Xinji, and Sis Han, and all the other Tang dynasty protector generals and great generals of the Central Plains, had sent their most elite spies to the southwest to scout the area. Although more than a month had passed since the war in the southwest, these top-class generals of the Tang dynasty still had no idea how Wang Chong had managed to defeat the Mengshi, Yusang army. This was still an inconceivable mystery to them. Although all the information related to the war had reached their hands, there were some things that could not be explained with words on paper. Before this, the name of Wang Chong had been an insignificant, nameless pawn to many great generals. Many of them had even prepared themselves for a major defeat in the southwest, and for all sides to call for help. But at this moment, the southwest had been won. This was something that no one had expected. Wang Chong was now a simple name. Even the great generals who had hated him to the bone during the regional commanders' incident, Foman Linta, Gao Xinji, Geshu Han, and Sis Han, none of them dared to underestimate him. Impossible. What a bitter battle. Even the ground is red. Just how many people have died? My lord might be wrong. This Wang Chong is even more frightening than we imagined. Countless scouts, spies, and scouts stared in shock at the ruins of the Southwest War. They had all survived on that hellish battlefield, so they all had a deep understanding of the battlefield. Far too many people had died on this battlefield. Whether it was the Northwest, the Northeast, or Biting, there were far too many wars every year. But no war had ever exuded such a bitter atmosphere. This cold and sinister aura was far too strong for the veterans of the battlefield. Unlike the high and mighty generals, all the low-level veterans could feel the intense struggles and screams of the low-level soldiers before their deaths. When the Annam Protectorate of 100,000 against 500,000 Mengshi, Yusang soldiers, they had always found this news hard to believe, as battles on the border rarely reached this scale. But after seeing this huge battlefield, and the thick red mud that was several feet deep, no one doubted it anymore. Shock was the only feeling everyone had when they arrived here. And one only had to think about how this youth called Wang Chong had led the 100,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate to carve a bloody path through the encirclement, defeating more than 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army. Everyone felt a deep respect for this youngest son of the Wang clan, whom they had not thought much of before. Walala. Countless messenger pigeons flew in all directions, and new letters flew in all directions. Not only the generals at the border, but also the foreign empires of the great powers around the Tang dynasty. In the dossiers of all the forces, an extremely important name was added, Wang Chong. Putting aside the activity in the southwest and the borders of the Tang dynasty, at this moment, the Tang dynasty was shrouded in excitement and celebration. Gallop! Make way, make way! Not long after Wang Chong's reward ceremony concluded, red-clothed cavalry galloped out of the city, traveling to various places in the capital. Whoosh! The leader of the cavalry dismounted from his horse and strode to the wall, where he pasted a yellow announcement stamped with the seal of the 6 bureaus onto the wall. After doing this, the cavalry galloped away. Ha ha ha! Wang Chong has been made a marquis. Wang Chong has been made a marquis. The young marquis? I've never heard of him before. Did His Majesty specially set up a marquis for him? Ha! Given his achievements in the southwest, what's a marquis to him? A young hero like this should be heavily rewarded. Correct. Well said. Well said. Haha. It seems like His Majesty thinks very highly of him. This is a blessing for the empire. The moment the cavalry left, a large group of people immediately gathered around. All the peddlers and servants, merchants, porters, restaurant owners, jugglers, calligraphers and painters. Everyone came from all directions and gathered in front of the yellow notice. Make way, make way. Suddenly a voice came from outside. It was unknown when, but an old man who looked like a teacher forcefully squeezed in from the outside and squeezed under the yellow notice. Let me take a look. Haha, old sir. What are you squeezing in for? You're already so old. Do you also want to learn how to be made a marquis? Someone teased, and in an instant the crowd exploded into an uproar. But the old man seemed not to hear. He squinted in front of the announcement, his expression focused as he placed a finger on the words that he had already seen outside. A fief. A fief. I didn't see wrong. The Tang dynasty has been around for 300 years, and His Majesty has actually made an exception and granted him a fief. The old man's voice resounded, his expression excited. Buzz. As soon as the teacher's voice fell, it was as if an invisible force had sucked away the air around them. The originally laughing crowd suddenly became silent. Not a single sound could be heard. A fief. Those who had lived in the capital for a long time and seen all sorts of celebrations knew a little. Bestowing official titles, but not fiefs, was a tradition of the Tang dynasty. In the era of the Holy Emperor, there had never been a fief. No one had expected that the Holy Emperor would grant Wang Chong a fief. What sort of grace was this? A marquis, a fief, a courtesy name bestowed by the Son of Heaven. On this day, the capital was buzzing with activity, destined to belong to Wang Chong. All sorts of rewards were bestowed, breaking the precedent set by the Tang dynasty. But no one felt that there was anything wrong with this. On the contrary, the streets were decorated with lanterns, and fireworks and firecrackers were lit. Some theatrical troupes and sideshow troupes even put on free performances on the streets. Only those who had truly experienced the War of the Southwest knew what sort of panic it had caused in the capital. All sorts of soldiers were mobilized, all sorts of news of defeat, and all sorts of foreign countries were taking advantage of the situation to stir up trouble. In the several centuries of the Tang dynasty, not even the oldest elder in the capital had experienced anything like this. The massive empire, under the threat of all sorts of foreign countries, had no soldiers to use. This was the most frightening of all. But it was in this moment of greatest panic that came the news of Wang Chong's great victory in the southwest. This youngest son of the Wang clan had turned the tide at the most dangerous and perilous moment, saving the southwest and the empire. Whether it was a marquis, a fief, or a courtesy name, no one thought much of it. This was what he deserved. Flap flap. A messenger pigeon flapped its wings, flying through the air to land in a heavily guarded estate in the western part of the city. On the plaque over the main entrance of the estate were several large and flamboyant words. Su residence. The Holy Emperor has greatly rewarded Wang Chong. Wang Chong has been made a marquis, a fief, and the Son of Heaven has bestowed a courtesy name. This is going to be troublesome. In the Su clan residence, Su Yichin's big uncle, Su Henian, looked at the letter in his hand, his brow creased in deep concern. In the War of the Southwest, the Su clan, under pressure from King Qi and political considerations, had completely imprisoned Su Yichin, expelled the Wang clan's guards, and severed all ties with the Wang clan. The Southwest had been guarded by 500,000 Mengshi, Yusang soldiers and renowned generals like Daluan Ruozan and Huashu Wuzong. Anyone would have believed that victory in the Southwest was impossible, and that its fall was only a matter of time. Even now, Su Hinian believed that his judgment had been correct. Moreover, between the Wang clan and King Qi, there was no question that King Qi, who was a member of the imperial family, had more authority and was more trustworthy. Thus, Su Hinian had made the decision to imprison Su Yiqin and prevent her from having any further contact with the Wang clan. But who could have expected that the Southwest would be won, and that boy called Wang Chong would become the greatest contributor? Made a marquis, a fief, a courtesy name. The first news from the imperial palace was like a dagger stabbing into Su Hinian's heart, causing his expression to turn extremely nasty. Even a fool could see that the Wang clan was in a period of great favor. The Holy Emperor regarded this youngest son of the Wang clan with great importance. At the very least, the Wang clan would be favored by the emperor for a very long time, and it would only get more and more so. Reporting. As Su Hinian was sitting in his room, his brow furrowed in worry, a voice came from outside. Master, the young marquis, newly conferred by the imperial court, has come to pay his respects. He is already at the door. What? Su Hinian's body trembled, and he immediately stood up from his seat. As the saying went, speak of the devil. He had just been thinking about how to deal with this matter. But the main character of the reward ceremony had already arrived at the Su clan's doorstep. Is he trying to use his power to denounce me? Su Hinian's eyes chilled as he immediately thought of something. He knew a little about the matter between his niece, Su Yiqin, and that youngest son of the Wang clan. They were both youths, at the age where they first awakened to love, and they could not escape from the affairs of men and women. Su Yiqin had been imprisoned and confined to the estate. Wang Chong had just been made a marquis not long ago, and now he had run to the Su clan to pay his respects. His goal was obvious. Tell him that I won't see him, Su Hinian immediately said with a wave of his sleeve. So what if it was the Wang clan? The Su clan had several hundred years of history, dating back to the end of the Sui dynasty. Even if it was a clan of ministers and generals, the Su clan could still choose to not see them. Yes, master. Wait a moment. The servant outside the door had barely taken a few steps when Su Hinian called him back. Humph. A marquis, a fief, and a courtesy name bestowed by the Son of Heaven. That brat from the Wang clan is currently at the height of his success, and the entire capital is watching him. If I refuse him at the door, the entire Su clan will become the common enemy of the Tang dynasty. That brat has made up his mind, which is why he dares to act so fearlessly. After the victory in the southwest, Su Hinian was well aware of how high Wang Chong's prestige in the Tang dynasty was. If Wang Chong took the initiative to pay his respects at this time, but the Su clan refused him at the door for no reason, there was no telling how badly he would be cursed. Chapter 657. So what if you're a newly promoted marquis? My Su clan's confinement of my own niece has nothing to do with anyone else. I'd like to see just what sort of tricks you can come up with. Su Hinian's heart burned with fury. Someone prepare the incense burner table and go out to welcome me. Su Hinian led a large group of maids, servants, and guards toward the main gate in a grandiose and aggressive manner. Boom! With a boom, the Su clan's tightly shut gate flew open. Su Hinian, his face gloomy, stepped out with a group of Su clan guards. A carriage was parked outside the gate, and next to it, Su Hinian could see a youth dressed in a red robe. His back was to the gate, and he was quietly standing there motionless. The youth's robes flapped in the breeze, exuding an uninhibited elegance. Lord Su, this is the first time we've met. It's an honor to meet you. Hearing the noise behind him, Wang Chong smiled, shook his sleeves and turned around. The age of 17 was the prime of one's youth. Born into a clan of ministers and generals, Wang Chong possessed a lofty temperament that ordinary scions of noble clans did not possess. This was coupled with the fair skin and handsome face he had inherited from his parents and clan, as well as the steady temperament he had gained from experiencing the cruel and fierce battlefield. The current Wang Chong exuded a tranquil and distant aura that would leave others in awe, yet it did not lose its elegance. A dragon among men. Anyone who saw Wang Chong couldn't help but think this. After the baptism of the War of the Southwest, Wang Chong's every move exuded an awe-inspiring temperament. He was completely different from the wastrel hedonist he had been at the start. Even Su Yiqin's big uncle, Su Henian, couldn't help but be taken aback. Wang Chong was far more handsome and elegant than he had imagined. Young Master Wang, what brings you here today? Su Henian quickly came back to his senses. With a cold snort, he glared at Wang Chong, his expression hostile. He had no intention of letting him in. Wang Chong just smiled calmly, not in a hurry. So this is Su Yiqin's big uncle Su Henian. Wang Chong looked the middle-aged man up and down. Although he had interacted with Su Yiqin many times, and knew who the Su family members were, Wang Chong had never seen a single one of the Su family members. His character is resolute, but he lacks decisiveness and boldness. The Prince of Qi must have used him to change the attitude of the Su clan, at the same time trapping Su Yiqin in the residence. While Wang Chong's face remained impassive, many thoughts were running through his mind. He had just returned to the capital when he received the news that Su Yiqin had been trapped in the residence by her big uncle and father, cut off from all contact with the outside world. She wasn't even allowed to step out of her own room. Although Wang Chong wanted to help Su Yiqin and help her break free from the shackles of the clan, he did not act rashly. Only after the reward ceremony was over did Wang Chong rush to the Su clan. Lord Su speaks too seriously. The Su clan is a prestigious clan of the Tang dynasty, and it is particularly skilled in the art of logistics. Wang Chong has wanted to pay a visit for a long time, but I only had the time today. Wang Chong clasped his hands and gave a deep bow. In addition, this one had an appointment with young Lady Su, but for some reason, young Lady Su never showed up, nor did she reply. This one is concerned and has come to pay a visit. There's such a thing. How did I not know? Su Henian sneered, a harsh light flashing through his eyes. How could he not know what Wang Chong was up to? The appointment was just an excuse. Su Yiqin had been imprisoned in the residence for more than a month, and not even a fly had been able to get out, much less get news. Moreover, Yiqin is currently ill and has closed her doors, refusing to see visitors and recuperating. If young Master Wang wishes to see her, I advise young Master to return home. Once Yiqin's body is better, young Master can come visit. After saying this, Su Henian immediately put on an attitude of declining visitors. The door was already open, and he had seen the person in question. Even an observant person wouldn't be able to find any fault with him. For Wang Chong, at such a young age, to dare to imitate others and come to his residence to denounce him was truly showing off before an expert. He was looking down on the Su clan far too much. Lord Su, my nephew has personally come to pay a visit. Does Lord Su intend to turn him away at the door, not even giving him a cup of tea? A dignified voice rang out in his ears. Behind Wang Chong, the door of the carriage that had been parked on the side of the street opened, and a steady and dignified figure walked out. His every movement exuded the aura of an important minister of the court. Lord Wang. Su Henian grimaced at the sight of this figure. He had only seen Wang Chong outside the door, never having expected Wang Chong to bring his big uncle with him. Moreover, Wang Zhen had been sitting in the carriage this entire time. Wang Zhen had clearly heard the entire conversation between him and Wang Chong. Lord Su, since my nephew has an appointment with your niece, let them resolve it themselves. Lord Su won't interfere and refuse on your niece's behalf, right? Wang Zhen stared at Su Henian with an unfriendly expression. If one looked carefully, one would even notice that a ball of rage was burning on his brow. Wang Chong was currently the most talented and capable person in the entire Wang clan. And he was also the person most likely to inherit the old master's influence. In his hands, the Wang clan was likely to reach even greater heights. And this time, the Holy Emperor had made him a marquis, a fief, and even a courtesy name. All of this was a clear demonstration of the Son of Heaven's high regard for Wang Chong. Countless nobles and clans in the capital had begun to think highly of the Wang clan and establish ties with it. Ever since Wang Chong had entered the city, the Wang clan had already received countless marriage requests from other clans, some of them even more influential than the Su clan. These clans all wanted to marry off their most outstanding women to Wang Chong. But Wang Chong had not agreed to any of them, and Wang Zhen had not lightly nodded his head. Given Wang Chong's current status, how could an ordinary woman be a match for him? But he had never imagined that when Wang Chong came to visit and meet with Su Yiqin, Su Yiqin's big uncle, Su Henian, would turn him away at the door. This made Wang Zhen extremely displeased. This, Lord Wang has misunderstood. Henian would never dare. Su Henian bowed, cold sweat dripping from his forehead. The Su clan's influence was mainly concentrated in the Bureau of Revenue and Bureau of Personnel, and these were positions without any real authority. They were on a completely different level from Wang Zhen, an important official of the court. Su Henian dared to turn away Wang Chong, but he did not dare to turn away Wang Zhen as well. Wang Chong was a junior, so there was nothing wrong with rejecting him at the door. However, Wang Zhen was of the same seniority as him. If he were to reject him as well, he would not only be severing his ties with the Wang clan, he would be thoroughly offending it. This was not the wisest course of action. After all, although the Wang clan's power could not compare to King Qi's, it was still not a clan that ordinary clans could lightly offend. But this lowly niece truly is in the residence. There was no turning back. Since Su Henian had already said that Su Yiqin was ill and had offended the Wang clan, he could only grit his teeth and continue speaking. But before Su Henian could finish, he was interrupted by a roar of laughter. Ha ha ha, Su Henian, you've truly hidden yourself well. In the War of the Southwest, your niece made such a great contribution, but you didn't even say a word. Public affairs cannot be neglected. Public affairs cannot be neglected. Su Henian, it's fine if you're modest, but don't push away your niece's contributions. The War of the Southwest is such a major affair. It's no wonder that the Su clan's little miss has been working day and night. Since she's ill, it's all the more reason to go and see her. The earth trembled as a simple but dignified carriage made its way over from the other end of the street. The carriage door opened, and under Su Henian's flabbergasted gaze, one imperial censor after another walked out. Su Henian, this is called not reporting what you know. Once we get back, we'll have to report you to His Majesty. Your Su clan has made such a great contribution. How could you conceal it? An imperial censor with a missing little finger on his left hand roared with laughter as he walked forward. Su Henian immediately recognized him as the court's one-fingered imperial censor Zhang Xiao. Although he was missing a finger, no one in the court had ever dared to look down on him. Back then, when the Holy Emperor had wanted to personally lead the army into battle, all the civil and military officials of the court had failed to dissuade him. In the end, Zhang Xiao had cut off his finger and was prepared to spill blood on the imperial carriage and smash himself to death in the palace. Only then did he manage to stop the Holy Emperor's plans. Because of this matter, everyone felt deep veneration for Zhang Xiao. Speaking of the one-fingered imperial censor, all of them would raise their thumbs. They all knew that he was an upright and plain-spoken individual. Contribution. Su Henian stared at the sudden appearance of several imperial censors, his eyes bewildered and his mind blank. Contribution. What contribution did the Su clan have? Why didn't he know? And why had these imperial censors appeared here? Ha ha ha, still pretending. Su Henian, you're going too far. If not for young Master Wang Chong telling us, just how long were you going to hide your niece's great contribution? Another imperial censor with a red tassel of jade tied to his waist walked forward, shaking his head and laughing. In his hand there was a golden scroll. But this matter is not up to you. The imperial court rewards merit and punishes fault. The Su clan's young miss has made such a great contribution that the imperial court cannot not reward her. Su Henian, prepare to receive your reward. Su Henian froze for a moment, then glanced at the smiling Wang Chong. He vaguely understood, and his face alternated between green and red. He had believed that Wang Chong had come to denounce him for his crimes, but he had not expected that Wang Chong would also help the Su clan earn a scholarly honor. Su Henian had been trying to distance himself from the Wang clan and King Qi this entire time, at the same time expressing the Su clan stance. But at this moment, in front of so many imperial censors, No matter how magnanimous King Qi was, he would not trust the Su clan. The younger generation will surpass the older. Su Hinian closed his eyes and gave a long sigh. Right now, whether he was willing or not, the relationship between the Su clan and the Wang clan was fated to become incomparably close in the eyes of many people. Not even Su Hinian could change this. And it just so happened that the Su clan could not refuse Wang Chang's contribution. "My lords, please come in." Chapter 658. In the depths of the Su family's mansion, a beautiful woman with fair skin, black hair that cascaded down like a waterfall, and exquisite facial features was sitting in a room. She was sitting in front of an intricate red sandalwood dressing table, facing a bronze mirror. Her head was slightly tilted as she combed her hair over and over again. Spirals of smoke wafted out of the purple incense burner, filling the quiet and elegant boudoir. The woman's eyes were fixed on the bronze mirror, but her mind was elsewhere. "I wonder how he's doing," Su Yiqin suddenly sighed, her eyes absent-minded. It had been nearly 2 months since the clan had confined her to her boudoir. At the beginning, she had been able to obtain news from the maids, but later on, when her big uncle discovered her, even the maids had been transferred away. At present, Su Yiqin had no way of receiving any news from the outside world. Her big uncle, Su Hinian, had not only confined her, but had also dispatched 4 of the clan's elite guards to guard the 4 corners of the room to prevent her from escaping. After several attempts, Su Yiqin was finally forced to give up on the idea. "Qiner, don't blame Big Uncle. In truth, Big Uncle is thinking for our Su clan. Think about it, this is King Qi we're talking about. He's like the midday sun in the imperial court. How could our Su clan oppose him?" A voice came from the side. Su Zhongnian, Su Yiqin's father, was standing not far behind Su Yiqin, his face earnest and well-intentioned. Su Yiqin's face was cold as she combed her waist-length, jet-black hair over and over again. She didn't seem to hear her father's words at all. During this period of confinement, her father, Su Zhongnian, would come by almost every day to give her a long lecture. In the past, Su Yiqin would at least listen to some of it, but this time, she didn't listen at all. "Qiner, don't get yourself into a dead end." Su Zhongnian grew increasingly worried when he saw that Su Yiqin couldn't hear him. "Think about it. What's so good about that Wang Chong? Is it worth it for you to go against eldest uncle and drag the entire Su family into it? Is it worth it for you to take such a huge risk? Besides, you've been locked up in the clan for so long. Have you seen that Wang Chong or the Wang clan do anything for you?" "Father, you don't have to say anything more. I know what to do, and I also believe that he will come looking for me." Su Yiqin finally interrupted her father. "Qiner, you're too silly." Although his father was useless, he had lived in the capital for so long that he had seen all sorts of people. That Wang Chong is just using you. Furthermore, father has also investigated that he has several female confidants, and you are just one of them. Perhaps he has already forgotten about you, so why would he still look for you? Father, hearing this, Su Yiqin's pretty face turned cold. The comb in her hand was halfway through when she slammed it on the purple dresser with a bang. The sound in the room suddenly stopped. Su Zhongnian was so frightened that he took several steps back. Although they were father and daughter, Su Zhongnian had always been a cowardly person with no opinions of his own, so his stance was not very firm. This time, under the pressure of his big brother Su Hinian, he would run to Su Yiqin's room every day and talk to her from morning to night, trying to persuade her. Thump thump. Just when Su Yiqin was getting angry, someone knocked on the door. "Who is it? Didn't I say not to disturb me if there's nothing important?" Su Yiqin angrily said. "Young lady, it's young Master Wang." Before the maid could finish speaking, the door to Su Yiqin's room was pushed open from the outside. In a rush of air, a tall and handsome figure in bright red walked in. "Su Yiqin, I've come." Wang Chong stepped over the threshold and smiled at Su Yiqin. Buzz! The room was silent. Su Yiqin turned her head and looked at the high-spirited figure in red standing at the door. It was a familiar yet unfamiliar figure. She was stunned and her mind was blank. Wang Chong. Su Yiqin muttered to herself, staring in disbelief at Wang Chong. She suddenly felt like she was in an illusion. Wang Chong! Before Wang Chong could react, Su Yiqin rushed forward like a gust of wind, throwing herself into Wang Chong's arms, tears pouring out of her eyes. It really is you, it really is you. Wang Chong was stunned, clearly not expecting this sight. But a moment later, he heard a familiar sobbing sound. Bastard, you bastard, I thought you were dead. Haha, didn't I say it before? I would definitely come back. How could I possibly die there? Wang Chong hesitated for a few moments at Su Yiqin's words, and then he smiled and softly consoled her. His hands also began to lightly hug Su Yiqin. Su Yiqin said nothing, only hugged Wang Chong and wept. In the War of the Southwest, Wang Chong had only brought several thousand hired martial artists with him, as he charged into the Southwest. Everyone believed that he was doomed, because no one could defeat the massive Mengshi Yusang army, not even Su Yiqin. Although she had never said it, she deeply understood that Wang Chong's journey to the Southwest was fraught with death. Countless times, when news from the Southwest was cut off, Su Yiqin believed that Wang Chong had already died there. But she could not say anything, could not do anything. The only thing she could do was do her utmost to help Wang Chong send all kinds of provisions and armaments to the Southwest. Su Yiqin had never imagined that she would be so worried for a single person, so worried about their gains and losses, so deeply concerned. When the entire empire was in a precarious situation, when everyone was filled with fear and worry, he was the only one who resolutely and decisively charged into the battlefield without any hesitation. That was the first time Su Yiqin had gotten to know Wang Chong, and it was also the first time she had sensed that the young and upright body of that 17-year-old contained a burning, courageous heart, brimming with boundless strength and responsibility. After the Southwest War, although the maid had told her that Wang Chong was still alive, Su Yiqin had always been under house arrest and had no access to news from the outside world. Without seeing it with her own eyes, how could she believe the maid's words? But at this moment, when Wang Chong truly appeared in front of her and felt the heat and warmth from his body, Su Yiqin finally believed that Wang Chong was still alive. He had truly returned from that perilous battlefield in the Southwest. The only sound in the quiet and elegant bedroom was Su Yiqin's soft sobs. Wang Chong lightly patted her back, a warm smile on his lips the entire time. In the room, Su Zhongyan stared in a daze at the pair. At this moment, he chose to quietly stand to the side. At this moment, silence spoke louder than words. While the entire Tang dynasty was immersed in joy, the wheels of history slowly began to move. In the distant western regions, close to the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, the tinkling of bells could be heard in the air. In the sparsely populated desert of Qixi, a white camel was slowly making its way forward, 2 bells of gold and silver hanging from its neck. The tinkling that echoed through the desert was coming from these bells. Amen, how far do we have to go before we reach the Tang dynasty? A woman's voice, even more melodious and pleasant than an oriole's, came from the camel's back. Princess, we should arrive in about half a month. The maid called Amen was leading the camel, softly comforting the beautiful girl, wearing a white veil on the camel's back. She had a graceful and delicate figure, but a sorrowful expression on her face. The sound of the camel's bell was crisp, and on this eastward journey, only the voices of master and servant could be heard. However, whether it was the white-clothed girl on the hunchback, or the female attendant holding the reins, none of them spoke in the language of the Central Plains. In truth, if one looked carefully, one would discover that these two had a very foreign air to them. Whether it was their deep and enchanting brown eyes, their naturally wavy hair, the contours of their faces, the lines of their faces, or the temperament they exuded, they were all completely different from the Tang people. Princess, don't be sad. Although the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains is very far from our homeland, there are still many of our people here. In addition, I hear that the Tang dynasty is extremely wealthy and civilized. At the very least, we won't have any problems living here. As long as we complete our mission, the Caliph will let us return. Amen said softly. On the back of the horse, the white-veiled girl looked ahead with a sorrowful expression. With every step she took, The sorrow in her heart increased. And tell me, is that young Tang people called Wang Chong really that important? Aaliyah said softly. Princess, you know how much importance the Caliph places on Wuxia's steel. We are known for our forging skills. But the Hyderabad ores have been in our hands for so long. His Majesty has gathered so many skilled craftsmen. But none of them can forge that magical Wuxia steel. Many of the Hyderabad ores have been wasted. Even the weapons forged by Master Usama cannot compare to the Wuxia steel made by that young Tang dynasty boy. Moreover, they are black and ugly, without any sense of beauty. We, the Abbasid Caliphate, have always been known for our excellent weapons. But so many masters can't forge a single piece of Wuxia steel. To His Majesty, this is completely unacceptable. Princess, you can imagine how angry His Majesty is. Amin tried to persuade her. Aaliyah only gave a long sigh and said no more. She was an Abbasid Caliphate princess, and logically speaking, she should be living a life of luxury, being served by hordes of servants, and living a luxurious life in a magnificent palace. She should not have to travel tens of thousands of li and wander around a foreign country. But only Aaliyah knew that the Abbasid Caliphate was different from the princesses of other empires. Although her father was the Caliph of Arabia, equivalent to the Emperor of Arabia, he had more than 100 princesses, and Aaliyah was only one of them. With so many siblings, it was easy to imagine how little importance Aaliyah was placed on this princess. Her fate was sealed from then on. I wonder what kind of person that young Tang people called Wang Chong is? Amidst the tinkling of camel bells, the Abbasid Caliphate princess called Aaliyah stared ahead in a daze. When everything was sealed and could not be changed, she suddenly only wanted to know, what kind of person was that foreign youth who had changed her fate? Ding ding ding! With the tinkling of the bells, the white camel slowly advanced, bringing master and servant along with a group of Arab cavalry behind them. Chapter 659. In the northwest wing of the Wang clan's mansion, the surroundings were quiet. A 16 to 17-year-old youth was sitting cross-legged on a bed, cultivating with his eyes closed. Although he looked young and handsome, the temperament the youth exuded was unusually steady, experienced, and as heavy as a mountain. Tzz. Wisps of white smoke rose from the top of the youth's head, gradually filling the entire room. The surroundings were quiet. After returning from the reward ceremony, Wang Chong had been cultivating silently at home. Thinking back, it had been a long time since he had cultivated so quietly. Time slowly passed. Wisps of spirit energy gathered from the depths of the surrounding space, surging into the depths of Wang Chong's body, slowly strengthening his cultivation. After an unknown period of time, suddenly something strange happened. A wisp of faint red blood energy suddenly mixed into the white smoke rising from the Baihui meridian on Wang Chong's head. In just an instant, the style of the scene in the room changed. Qi, blood vessels as thick as a finger, as if they were alive, suddenly spread out from under Wang Chong's collar. These dark red blood vessels were like branching branches, quickly spreading from under his collar to his neck, and then to his entire face. Cold sweat, tinged with the color of blood, quickly seeped out from his forehead and face. Wang Chong's face twitched, showing an extremely twisted expression. Ah! Wang Chong suddenly opened his eyes and let out a cry of pain. His body leaned forward, one hand pressed against the bed in front of him, his chest heaving violently. In the blink of an eye, Wang Chong's robe was quickly soaked, and there were faint traces of blood on it. Wang Chong's body trembled, but he did not say a word, much less let out another cry of pain. The room was quiet. Cold sweat with streaks of blood gathered on the bed in front of Wang Chong, turning from a few drops into a pool. After an unknown amount of time, when the pain in his body had subsided, Wang Chong struggled to get off the bed. He took off his blood-stained robe and walked to the corner of the room. He picked up a towel and dipped it in water from a golden plate that he had prepared beforehand. Then he slowly wiped his body. "Let me do it." A voice suddenly sounded from behind him. The voice was cold, but there was a kind of moving rhythm to it. Wang Chong shook his head. Just as he was about to refuse, a delicate woman's hand immediately reached out from behind and took the towel from Wang Chong's hand. Then she began to wipe Wang Chong. Wang Chong hesitated for a moment, but didn't say anything. He just let the woman in the room wipe his body. The towel was continuously soaked into the golden basin, and the basin of clear water instantly turned into a blood-red color. What is this? I remember that you didn't have this illness before you went to the southwest. But in the past 7 days, this is the third time it has flared up. What in the world happened? Mayasame Ayaka's enchanting figure was still dressed in black. As she wiped Wang Chong's body, she asked in concern. When Wang Chong had gone to the southwest, Mayasame Ayaka had been guarding the Wang clan residence. Now, she was about to become the Wang clan's shadow. There were few secrets in the Wang clan that could be hidden from her. Haha, there's no need for you to know. Besides, you can't help me, Wang Chong indifferently said. You won't say? Mayasame Ayaka's hand paused for a moment before she resumed wiping. Are you afraid that the old madam will worry? It's fine as long as you know. Don't let mother know, Wang Chong indifferently said. At the height of the Southwest War, Wang Chong had single-handedly killed more than 10,000 enemies and secured the defense line. But all this had come at a price. But Wang Chong had said nothing of this to anyone. Thump, thump, thump. While he was deep in thought, he suddenly heard a knock on the door. Young master, the carriage has been prepared. If young master wishes to go to the Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion, you can leave at any time. I understand. Wang Chong nodded. Take care of the towel, clothes, and basin. Don't let anyone know, especially my mother. Yes. With these words, Wang Chong opened the door and left. A carriage had stopped at the door. Wang Chong boarded the carriage and set off for the Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion. The Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion was a restaurant that Wang Chong had opened. It was grand and imposing, and gathered many outstanding chefs. Thanks to Wang Chong's 3 songs of peace, the Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion had become a new noble in the capital. Coupled with Wang Chong's recent achievements in the southwest, the Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion had become one of the most popular places in the capital. If you don't drink Tai Bai white wine, you can't call yourself a citizen of the Jade Capital. This was a saying that had spread far and wide in the capital. It was for this reason that Wang Chong's Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion had become the ideal place for scholars and wealthy merchants to meet and socialize. In the capital, it had even surpassed the Yao clan's vast Crane Pavilion, becoming a famous establishment in the capital. On top of that, it brought in a considerable income for Wang Chong and the Wang clan every month. This was something that Wang Chong didn't expect when he first opened the shop. However, this was a restaurant that Wang Chong had opened for his own convenience, so it was naturally very different from other places. The greatest difference was that only Wang Chong could enjoy the top floor of the Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion. Moreover, as long as Wang Chong needed it, the entire Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion could close its doors at any time, only for Wang Chong to enjoy. But even so, this Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion not only failed to incite discontent, it even attracted more people. This was because Wang Chong was the greatest attraction of the Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion. Everyone wanted to see this hero of the Southwest, the youngest marquis in the history of the Tang dynasty. The Marquis. The Marquis. The Marquis. Rumble. Wang Chong's carriage had barely reached the vicinity of the Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion when it was thrown into the water, causing a huge uproar in the crowd. Look, it's the young Marquis. Wah, it really is the young Marquis's carriage. Out of the way, out of the way. Let me see. I've been standing guard here for 7 days. I hear that the young Marquis is only 17 and unmarried. If he takes a liking to me, I might be able to marry into the Wang clan and be with him forever. Get out of the way. You're already in your 20s, even older than the young Marquis. Auntie, Wang Chong, look over here, look over here. The gate of the Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion was bustling with activity. A large crowd of men, women, old, and young had surrounded Wang Chong's carriage so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. And in this crowd, the majority were unmarried girls. Wang Chong was only 17 years old, born of a clan of ministers and generals, and a hero of the empire. He was an unparalleled star of generals. Although he had yet to become a general, The capital was already calling him the empire's eighth great general. An unmarried young man like him was the dream lover of countless young girls in the imperial capital. Thus, wherever Wang Chong went, a large number of girls would appear. One of the main reasons why Wang Chong had been forced to stay in his estate to cultivate was also because of this. "Young master, we can't move." Coachman's voice came from outside the carriage. The girls on the street had gone crazy, some of them grabbing onto the reins of the carriage and blocking its path. "I know." Wang Chong slightly creased his brow. Fame had its troubles, and in this current situation, not even he could do anything about it. "This is all I can do." Wang Chong lightly patted the window of the carriage. Bang! The window opened, and a figure flew out. His right hand lightly patted the roof of the carriage. Borrowing this force, Wang Chong soared like a sparrow hawk to the top floor of the Taibai Immortals Pavilion amidst cries of alarm. He, the mighty young Marquis of the Tang Dynasty, the Son of Heaven's disciple personally conferred by His Divine Majesty, actually has to go through the window to get out of a carriage. If this gets out, people will laugh their heads off. A giggle came from nearby. Zhao Yadong was hugging her signature red-tasseled spear and leaning against a cinnabar pillar, her face wreathed in smiles. Who told him to be so popular with girls? Serves him right. Another jealous voice came from nearby. Huang Qian'er, dressed in a light yellow robe and carrying her signature silver sword on her back, was staring at Wang Chong with an unfriendly gaze. Wang Chong felt very awkward. He had been laughed at by these girls quite a few times in this period of time. "Huang Qian'er, don't make fun of me." Wang Chong bitterly smiled. "All right, to see the godly young Marquis of the Tang Dynasty on the front lines suffer like this. It wasn't in vain that we came. Sisters, don't make things difficult for him. Wang Chong, hurry and come over. Everyone's here. You're the only one left." Nearby, on the top floor of the Taibai Immortals Pavilion, was a large round table made of sandalwood. The table was packed with people. Guofeng, Chai Ziyi, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, Zhao Jingdian, Su Gan, Fang Xianying, Martianisi, Bai Siling, and Sui Qin. Bai Siling was seated on a large reclining chair, a smirk on her face as she faced Wang Chong. At this moment, everyone else in the restaurant had their heads turned away, pretending to drink tea or pretending to be thinking. All of them wisely pretended not to see anything. Bai Siling, Zhao Yadong, Huang Qian'er, and Sui Qin all had some ambiguous feelings between them and Wang Chong. Only a fool would choose to get involved at a time like this, when these four illustrious beauties and talented women of the capital flew into a rage. Not just anyone would be able to endure it. There were times when everyone felt some sympathy for him. "Everyone, I've kept you waiting." Wang Chong chuckled at being treated like a joke. After a few moments of thought, he waved his sleeve and calmed down. Leisurely walking over, Wang Chong sat down between Guofeng and Chai Ziyi. The women's eyes flashed at the spot Wang Chong had chosen, and the mood instantly softened. Formidable, Guofeng and Chai Ziyi, who were sitting on either side of Wang Chong, secretly gave him looks of praise. "Brother Wang, why have you gathered so many of us here? What's the matter?" In the end, it was Fang Xianying who broke the silence. They had all received Wang Chong's invitation this morning and hurried to the Taibai Immortals Pavilion. Although they had all believed this to be a simple gathering, the presence of Guofeng and Chai Ziyi immediately made them realize that it was not so simple. Chapter 660. Everyone, to tell the truth, I've gathered all of you here today because I have a request. Wang Chong leisurely said as he picked up a piece of Lin Ling cloud cake from the table and carefully chewed it in his mouth. Everyone's eyes brightened at Wang Chong's words, a look of anticipation on their faces. But even so, none of them had any intention of declining. On the contrary, their eyes were filled with anticipation. In the Southwestern War, all the clans that had participated in the war, including the reinforcements, had been lavishly rewarded by the imperial court. Those clans that had sent their experts to follow Wang Chong into the southwest early on were especially richly rewarded. This was truly a case of when one man attained the Tao, his chickens and dogs ascending to the heavens. In the capital, Wang Chong's influence had reached an inconceivable level. All the clans wanted to work with him, because they knew that working with him would bring them enormous benefits. As long as Wang Chong made a call, countless clans would be willing to respond. Because the people on the top floor of the Tai Bai Immortals Pavilion had been the first to establish a relationship with Wang Chong, they had already become the core of Wang Chong's circle, the targets of envy and jealousy. Brother Wang, speak. No matter what you want, our Qi clan will do everything in our power to find what young master wants. The moment Wang Chong finished speaking, Qi Weiqi immediately stood up and said without hesitation. He didn't know about the other clans, but the Qi clan had been heavily rewarded for its support of Wang Chong in the war. His two older brothers had even been promoted a rank, dealing a massive blow to the Qi clan. It had to be known that his two older brothers had originally been commandants, but because of their relationship with Wang Chong, they had been promoted to generals. The difference between a commandant and a general was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. This, Wang Chong said nothing more. He flicked a few pieces of paper he had prepared out of his sleeve and placed them in front of everyone. Oh, seeing the pieces of paper Wang Chong had prepared, everyone was greatly curious. Even Bai Xiling and Zhao Yadong temporarily let go of Wang Chong and focused their attention on the pieces of paper in front of them. Lime. Bai Xiling was shocked when she saw the words on the paper. She thought that Wang Chong was looking for them for some important matter, but she didn't expect it to be this kind of thing. And clay. At the same time, Zhuang Jingping also opened the small piece of paper in front of him. He looked even more shocked than Bai Xiling. Wasn't this thing used to make ceramics? It should be everywhere in the capital. Why would Wang Chong want something so ordinary? Moreover, if it was just clay, Wang Chong didn't need to ask the Zhuang family for help. I know you guys are very strange, but this matter is very important to me. Most importantly, whether it's lime or clay, I need a lot of them. As if understanding their doubts, Wang Chong faintly smiled and added, how much is a lot? Zhao Yadong frowned and asked. Unlimited. I want as much as I can get. At the very least, what we have in the capital is far from enough to satisfy me. Wang Chong said. Buzz. Everyone was stunned by Wang Chong's words, and even Guofeng and Chai Ziyi's eyes widened. Not even Guofeng and Chai Ziyi knew how much lime and clay the capital had. But there was one thing that was certain. The quantity was unimaginably vast. As the capital of the Tang dynasty, the resources amassed in the capital were undoubtedly unparalleled in the world. For Wang Chong to say that it was far from enough was simply beyond their imaginations. Just what sort of plan would require so much lime and clay? And even now, none of them knew what Wang Chong needed so many materials for. Besides, what could lime and clay do? Haha, you'll know when the time comes. Wang Chong faintly smiled. After the victory in the southwest, Wang Chong had been rewarded with 3 million taels of gold and a large amount of jewels. This allowed Wang Chong to finally begin his other plan. Lime and clay were two of the most important things in this plan. Whether it was the Zhao clan, Bai clan, Qi clan, Zhuang clan, these were all great clans of the capital. They had operated in the capital for decades, centuries, and possessed enormous connections and resources. This was also the primary reason why Wang Chong had gathered Bai Xiling, Zhao Yadong, Guofeng, and Chai Ziyi. This was a project related only to the economy. There was no glint of blood, no thick smoke of gunpowder. But to Wang Chong, this project was no less important than the War of the Southwest. And to the Tang dynasty, it was far more important. But now, apart from himself, no one knew what he was doing. That's right, Wang Chong, Chai Ziyi suddenly said after a moment of hesitation. If this new plan requires a large amount of resources and money, can our Chai clan also participate? Chai Ziyi was very hesitant with these words, but Wang Chong's response had taken him by surprise. Haha, of course. Wang Chong heartily laughed. The effects of the War of the Southwest were beginning to show. Even a stubborn clan like the Chai clan was beginning to be moved. It wanted to join in and get a share of the profits, a share of the credit. But this was precisely what Wang Chong wanted. The plan that he was about to carry out would require a great deal of money and resources, not something that he could afford alone. The Chai clan might have believed that Wang Chong was unwilling to share the credit with them. But the reality was the exact opposite. Wang Chong needed a large number of clans like the Chai clan to participate in his plan. Brother Chai, Brother Gua, and everyone else, no matter who wants to participate, I, Wang Chong, will not refuse anyone. The more the better. Although I can't guarantee anything else, this matter will definitely be of great merit to the various clans. Wang Chong faintly smiled. In the room, everyone's eyes lit up. Just this sentence alone was enough for them. After leaving the Taibai Immortals Pavilion, Wang Chong headed east. Stop. After several thousand meters, Wang Chong's carriage came to a stop next to a lush tree. Bang! The carriage door opened, and a figure seemed to know that Wang Chong would stop here. Marquis. The figure in the carriage bowed to Wang Chong. Haha, Sir Zhang. There's no need to be so courteous. Just call me Wang Chong. Sit. Wang Chong gestured at the seat across from him, a faint smile on his face. Then I shall respectfully accept. Zhang Shouji clasped his hands and sat down on the seat across from Wang Chong. From Lion City to the final decisive battle in the southwest, Zhang Shouji had been at Wang Chong's side. Zhang Shouji's contributions to Wang Chong's success could not go unnoticed. At Wang Chong's side, he was undoubtedly one of the core members. Just what is it that would trouble you to come here in person? Wang Chong smiled. He had received Zhang Shouji's letter and rushed here to meet with him. In truth, it's nothing much. I was just asked by someone to ask for a favor from young master. Zhang Shouji chuckled. To be able to ask for your help, that person must have quite the face. Speak, Cheng Zhang Huang Lu, of the 4 swordsmithing clans. Which one of them ran over and persuaded you to come ask for a favor? Wang Chong couldn't help but laugh. He was used to seeing Zhang Shouji's strict demeanor, so to suddenly see him plead on someone else's behalf was unprecedented. But it wasn't hard for Wang Chong to guess. A master architect like Zhang Shouji, who had even constructed the imperial palace, besides the masons, only the clans of swordsmithing masters like Cheng, Zhang, Huang, and Lu could form a close relationship with him. Haha, young master is wise. It truly was the capital's Huang clan that sought me out and asked me to come ask for a favor. Zhang Shouji said. Is it because of that matter? Wang Chong's voice suddenly turned cold. Yes. Zhang Shouji nodded, and his expression became much more serious. Before Wang Chong had even set out for the Southwestern War, he had already asked the Cheng, Zhang, Huang, and Lu clans and all the sword shops and smiths in the capital for a large number of war machines. But at the most crucial moment of the war, there was a shortage of war machines, and the problem lay with the capital's Huang clan. The war machines that Wang Chong had requested from them had simply not been completed. In the end, at the height of the war, Wang Chong simply did not have enough steel walls to make up for it. Wang Chong knew of this matter, Zhang Shouji knew of it, and all the craftsmen who had participated in the war knew of it. If the Annam Protectorate had failed, and Wang Chong had died there, it wouldn't have mattered much. But Wang Chong had returned alive, and he had won a major victory. The capital's Huang clan was clearly afraid that Wang Chong would settle the score, so they had sought out the person closest to Wang Chong, Zhang Shouji, to plead for leniency. And they still have the face to say that. Wang Chong's face was frosty. Young master, in truth, they can't be blamed for this matter. The Huang clan didn't intentionally delay the payment. They have operated in the capital for many years, a brand that has existed for centuries. No matter what, they would never go back on their word. The Huang clan also has its own difficulties. Zhang Shouji said. What difficulties? If the 4 great clans were all like them, we would have long since died on the battlefield of the southwest. Wang Chong sneered. The steel walls were an extremely important part of his plan. Without those sturdy steel walls, just the advantage of the mountains would have been impossible to stop the charge of the Mengshi, Yusang army. To the Huang clan, it might have just been some money and contracts. But to the Annam Protectorate, it was the lives of 100,000 soldiers. This was why Wang Chong was so angry. Ever since he had arrived in the capital, he had visited all the great clans, but he had not visited the Huang clan. The Huang clan had clearly sensed something. which was why they were acting like this. I also tried to understand this matter, even going to the Huang clan to personally investigate. It wasn't that the Huang clan wasn't willing to fulfill their contract with young master, but that they had no more steel to use. Chapter 661. Oh! Wang Chong's eyes flashed, a hint of surprise finally appearing on his face. What do you mean? Although he was somewhat dissatisfied with the Huang clan, Wang Chong still had a great deal of trust in Zhang Shouji. If young master carefully thinks about it, you will definitely realize that the Huang clan actually built a significant portion of the steel walls. But later on, when the clan ran out of refined iron, and the Huang clan went to the market to buy more, they discovered that they had run out of ore. Zhang Shouji said, "How could that be?" Wang Chong immediately refuted Zhang Shouji's words. Everywhere in the Tang dynasty, there is an endless supply of refined iron and ore to the capital. In the last several hundred years, the supply has always exceeded the demand, and there has never been a shortage of refined iron and ore on the market. How could the Huang clan suddenly run out of supplies? Wang Chong had a look of disbelief on his face. It wasn't that he didn't believe Zhang Shouji, but that the Huang clan's excuse was very hard to believe. He had lived in the capital for many years, and he had been stubborn and dissolute, mingling with the scions of various clans. Thus, he had some understanding of the situation in the capital. The Huang clan's argument was simply untenable. Let alone him, no one else would so easily believe them. In normal circumstances, this would truly be impossible, but something happened at that time. For some reason, the Arab merchants in the capital suddenly changed their behavior. After selling off the pearls and agate, they stopped buying silk, tea, and ceramics, and instead went to buy refined iron and ore. It was precisely because of their interference that the Huang clan ran out of iron and refined iron. Buzz! Before Zhang Shouji could finish speaking, Wang Chong's body trembled, and he raised his head to stare in shock across from him. Sir Zhang, what did you just say? The Arabs? Young Master Chong, what's wrong? Zhang Shouji was given a fright by Wang Chong's expression. Other than during the Southwestern War, Zhang Shouji had never seen Wang Chong look like this. Sir Zhang, you just said that the Arab merchants are buying up refined iron and ore in the capital? Wang Chong ignored Zhang Shouji's words. He stretched out his arm and grabbed Zhang Shouji's arm tightly. After seeing Zhang Shouji nod in confusion, Wang Chong's mind buzzed and exploded. Who? The carriage was silent, but Wang Chong's heart was in turmoil. 3 years of war, 10 years of preparation, refined iron and iron, or had always been inextricably linked to battle and death. The fact that the Arabs were buying up refined iron and iron, or in the Central Plains, meant only one thing. The Arabs were preparing for a new war. And an opponent worthy of the Arabs fighting, in Wang Chong's memories, to the far west of the western regions, where the Arabian Empire was located, while the Tang dynasty was slowly halting its expansion and becoming more conservative. The distant Arabian Empire had already completed its conquest of all the surrounding powers. Even Charax-Spasinu had become its vassal state. The impression that the Tang dynasty had of the Arabs was still this. They looked no different from the Hu and only knew how to buy and sell spices, gems, and camels. Their country was extremely small, about the size of Mengshi Zhao or Goguryeo, but they had no idea that the Arabian Empire had already completed its most important expansion and was ushering in its golden age. This was an empire with more than 28 million people and an area of 12.6 million square kilometers. It was even larger than the Tang dynasty. In this era, there were only 2 great empires that could truly stand shoulder to shoulder with it. One was Tang, and the other was Arabia. However, in this era, none of the great empires acknowledged the existence of the other. And if the Arabian Empire wanted to wage war, it could only attack the Tang dynasty and Sindhu in the east. Young master, an anxious voice came from afar, and an old face with a face full of hardships slowly became clear in his eyes. Zhang Shouji looked worriedly at Wang Chong. He had just been discussing the matter of the Huang clan and the Arabs, but for some reason, Wang Chong had become motionless and inaudible. I'm fine. Wang Chong shook his head as he came back to his senses. I know about the Huang clan. Tell them that they can forget about the Southwest. As long as they complete the contract we agreed on, I can treat it as if nothing happened. But if it happens again, I won't let them off. With the Huang clan's current status and influence, even if the Huang clan was a renowned swordsmithing clan of the capital, with a legacy of several hundred years, it could still easily crush them into dust. This was definitely not just a threat. Definitely. Zhang Shouji rejoiced at Wang Chong's words. With such a major oversight, even if they were as bold as the heavens, they would never dare to commit such a crime again. There was a natural connection between master architects and swordsmithing clans. Moreover, as one of the largest swordsmithing clans of the Tang dynasty, the Huang clan played an extremely important role. If Wang Chong wanted to do something in the future, the Huang clan would definitely be able to play an important role. This was also why Zhang Shouji was willing to plead on the Huang clan's behalf. Only those with the best smithing skills could forge sabers, swords, and all sorts of other weapons. The Cheng, Zhang, Huang, and Lu great clans did not just know how to forge sabers and swords. Zhang Shouji quickly opened the carriage door and left. But Wang Chong sat in the carriage, his mind in turmoil, unable to calm down for a long time. Outside the carriage window, the sky over the capital was clear and cloudless, but Wang Chong could clearly smell the scent of war in the air. The Battle of Talas. This thought flitted through Wang Chong's mind. This was the first and largest war between the Great Tang and the Abbasid Caliphate, the two greatest empires of the East and West. And in Wang Chong's plans, this was a war that he had to reverse, a war that he had to win. Buzz. Time slowly passed, and as Wang Chong was lost in thought, a strange feeling suddenly welled up in his mind. Without the slightest warning, an intense sense of danger surged out of his mind, so intense that Wang Chong felt his scalp go numb. Wang Chong's eyes widened. Bang! With no time to think, Wang Chong suddenly broke through the carriage wall and flew out. As he flew out, Wang Chong clapped his hands together, sending a thick stream of stellar energy through the carriage and jolting coachman out. Boom! The moment Wang Chong flew out, a massive boom came from behind him, sending shockwaves of energy flying in all directions. At the same time, cries of alarm rang out in the crowd, causing them to retreat in fright, as if they were avoiding the plague. 10 some zhang away, Wang Chong turned his head, and when he saw the scene behind him, his face twisted into a nasty grimace. Behind him, the ground had caved in, and in the center of this caved-in was the bronze carriage that Wang Chong had ridden in. Its shafts, frame, and windows were scattered all over the place. And in the center of these fragments was a bronze bell as heavy as a mountain. If not for Wang Chong's quick reaction, he and his carriage would have been smashed into meat paste by that bell. Just where did this bronze bell come from? Coachman sat on the ground. His face was covered in blood, and his eyes were filled with deep fear. A fragment of the carriage pierced through his thigh, and blood was gushing out. But he didn't seem to feel it at all. If Wang Chong hadn't sent him flying in time, he would have been crushed into pieces like the carriage in front of him. Hurry up, hurry up! Grandma, I'm so scared, that the surroundings were in chaos. Many people were so frightened by this sudden change that they sat on the ground. Some little girls screamed, and white-haired old women were so scared that their faces turned pale. Many people were injured by the fragments of the carriage, and their bodies were stained with blood. However, most of them were still frightened by what they saw. Bolang bell. Wang Chong looked at the huge bell behind him with an ashen expression, and an awful expression. More than 1,000 years ago, in the pre-Qin era, someone used this assassination method in Gu Bolang to deal with the first emperor. Wang Chong didn't expect that someone would use the same method to deal with him. Wang Chong scanned the surroundings and quickly looked at the sky. Unlike others, Wang Chong was very sure that this bronze bell had fallen from the sky, and from a very high place at that. But when Wang Chong raised his head, the sky was empty. There was nothing there. Where did this bronze bell come from? Someone, clean up this place and arrange for the injured to receive treatment. Yes, young master. The moment Wang Chong gave the order, figures immediately came out from hidden places in the surroundings. These were the guards of the Wang clan. Wang Chong had been conferred the title of Marquis, and the entire Wang clan viewed him with great importance. Even if Wang Chong wasn't willing, Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen, Uncle Li Lin, and little uncle Wang Mi would never agree. Please follow me. Young lady, how are you? The guards of the Wang clan had just arrived, when everyone was at their most relaxed. Boom! A bluestone wall closest to Wang Chong suddenly shattered. Behind the wall, a figure clad in massive armor, standing on a brilliant halo of thorns, charged out. Sivadala Sausarawala. The giant man spoke in a strange language, and before he finished speaking, his golden saber flashed. Boom! A majestic saber energy shot through the air, instantly enveloping Wang Chong's body. Even the air was cleaved in two by the saber energy. Like a wave of water, two clear spatial scars more than 10 zhang tall appeared. Chapter 662. The Profound Martial Realm. And an expert close to the Imperial Martial Realm. This thought flitted through the minds of the crowd. They were only ordinary guards of the Wang clan. So how could they compare to an expert of this level? Buzz! A moment later, under their stunned gazes, Wang Chong raised a finger and lightly pointed, immediately blocking that vast and terrifying saber energy. Boom! A scorching beam of sword chi shot out of Wang Chong's fingertip, shattering the saber chi into pieces. At almost the same time, Wang Chong swung his left hand. Before anyone could see what was going on, the Wuxia steel sword at Wang Chong's waist slashed through the air, piercing through the giant man's thick armor. The tip of the sword pierced through his heart and out his back. Clang! The armored giant's knees buckled and he fell to the ground, the dazzling halo of thorns at his feet extinguished. The giant man's eyes were wide open as he stared at the nearby Wang Chong, apparently not daring to believe that his full-strength attack had been so easily broken by Wang Chong. You overestimate yourself. Wang Chong sneered and slowly walked over with a wave of his sleeve. In the War of the Southwest, his strength had exploded, allowing him to easily break into the Imperial Martial Realm. Even Long Kimba had been easily killed by him, let alone an opponent of this level. Moreover, the more majestic the saber energy, the better. Quality would always prevail over quantity. So Yung Sun's art of god and demon obliteration was known as the #1 technique in the world. So how could ordinary saber energy compare to it? Swish! Swish! Wang Chong had barely taken 2 steps when his eyes widened. At the end of the street, he heard a shrill whistle. 3 pitch-black arrows, gleaming with azure light, flew out in a triangular formation. The moment they appeared, they were already in front of Wang Chong's face. Bzzz! Wang Chong's body slightly leaned to the side as if he had calculated it, dodging the 3 arrows by a hair. Pung pung pung. The 3 arrows hit a 100-year-old locust tree by the side of the road, blowing its trunk into pieces. Wang Chong easily dodged the 3 poisoned arrows. Then, his body flashed and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. When he reappeared, he was already dozens of feet away. Boom boom boom. Just behind him, another wave of arrows shot over from the opposite direction, passing by where he was originally standing. Just a moment later, a section of the wall behind him collapsed, smoke and dust billowing into the air. However, everything was far from over. Kill him! Shouts came from all directions. After the 2 waves of attacks, figures suddenly tore off their disguises and whizzed in from all directions. The Hu, the Western Regioners, the Uzun, the Abbasid Caliphate, and even the Han. These people had been following Wang Chong for who knew how long, and only now did they suddenly attack. Swish swish. The first to arrive were the crescent moon-shaped Arabian scimitars. These special scimitars were only a foot long, and the front and back of these scimitars were flat. Only the 2 sides of the scimitars, which were covered in exquisite carvings, could be touched. In truth, this was the only place where the scimitar wielders could borrow strength. After the Arabian scimitars came countless weapons. The Hu, the Western Regioners, the Uzun, the Arabs, and the Han were like hungry tigers, fiercely attacking from all sides. Halos after halos intertwined under their feet, instantly surrounding Wang Chong and sealing off all his paths of movement and retreat. These Hu, the Western Regioners, the Uzun, the Arabs, no matter which tribe they had belonged to, at this moment, none of that mattered. All of them had formed an invisible tacit understanding. That was to kill Wang Chong. Buzz! Even as the countless scimitars and weapons were about to strike him, Wang Chong only faintly smiled, his expression calm and tranquil, as if these people didn't even exist. Bang! With a light step, a blood-colored barrier of stellar energy emerged from his body, enveloping him like a bell. Clang! 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 All the scimitars and concealed weapons collided with this layer of qi, but it was as if they had collided with an iron wall, and were all blocked. I still haven't done my homework. Wang Chong scanned his surroundings, a cold and harsh light in his eyes. If these people had truly investigated him, they would know that he was no longer the same as he had been in the past. He was no ordinary martial artist, nor was he someone who could rely on numbers to win. It was obvious that these people had only investigated him for his outstanding grasp of the art of war. But they had no idea that his martial arts cultivation was equally astonishing. Li Sai! Wang Chong did not attack. Instead, he opened his mouth and spat out a name. Boom! In the blink of an eye, in a restaurant not far away, a tall, strong mountain-like figure suddenly jumped down from the second floor. Behind him was a strangely long broadsword that was as tall as an adult. It was extremely eye-catching. Boom! A faint ripple flashed in the air. No one could see how Li Sai drew his sword, but in the next instant, a gray and incomparably sharp sword qi pierced through the air. The sword tore through the air, slicing the 8 assassins at the very back into 2 at the waist. The sword qi did not stop there. It shattered the stone tiles of the street, leaving behind a sword scar. Tinsum Zhang Long. Don't worry about it. Kill him first. A burly who spat out a string of words. Disregarding everything else, he charged at Wang Chong. But in the next instant, a narrow dagger swiftly slid across his neck, as well as the necks of the other assassins. Pu. In the blink of an eye, the remaining assassins fell to the ground with their eyes wide open, as if they had been reaped from a field of straw. Marquis, are you all right? On the other side, Li Sai retracted his sword and quickly stepped forward. I'm fine. They clearly didn't investigate enough for such a problem to occur. Wang Chong indifferently said as he slowly put away the narrow Wuxia steel dagger in his hand. This was a dagger he had specially forged for himself. Its original purpose was to practice his sword qi, but it was more than enough to deal with these people. Clang! Grabbing the Wuxia steel sword in the chest of the unmoving armored man, Wang Chong forcefully pulled it out. At the same time, his left hand lightly pulled out the helmet on the armored man's head. It really is a Turk. Wang Chong appeared unsurprised. It's not just the Turks. There are also the Gogurians, Arabs, Uzan, Western Regioners, and even the Khitans. Marquis won a major victory in the southwest, defeating Dalawan Ruozan and Huashu Wazong. Everyone now views you as a thorn in their side. Li Sai worriedly said. Wang Chong appeared relaxed on the outside, but he was tense on the inside. On the surface he appeared to be alone, but in reality, all of his trusted aides were following behind him. In just a few moments, countless figures had rushed out from all directions. The restaurants, the inns, the alleys, and the 2 sides of the street were all packed with people. With Wang Chong's current status, he was completely different from that of an ordinary scion. He was no longer a scion, but a true duke. Just his title as the son of heaven's disciple meant that countless people were watching him, both in the open and in the shadows, protecting him. At this critical juncture, no one would be able to bear the responsibility if something were to happen to him. Haha, this is inevitable. Wang Chong waved his hand, seemingly unconcerned. After experiencing the Azura battlefield of the Southwest, he had no reason to care about such a minor matter. That's right, didn't I tell you already? Why are you still calling me Marquis? Your subordinate wouldn't dare. There are differences between superiors and subordinates. Young Master is now a Marquis, and His Majesty personally bestowed the title of Young Marquis. If even people at his side don't respect Marquis, won't others be even less convinced? Li Sai lowered his head and respectfully bowed. Wang Chong helplessly shook his head. This was Li Sai's personality. He was as hard as a rock. As long as he set his mind on something, no one could change his mind. I know it's useless to talk to you, so do as you please. As Wang Chong spoke, he turned his head in another direction, where several familiar figures were hurrying over. From their clothes, Wang Chong could tell at a glance that these were people from the Bureau of Rights and the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Marquis, my apologies for being late. How are you? Are you injured? Forgive us, Marquis. We will definitely strengthen our patrols and not allow something like this to happen again. These bastards are too bold. In broad daylight, under the bright sun, they dare to act recklessly in the capital. Several red-robed officials from the Bureau of Rights and the Chamberlain of Dependencies kicked the corpses of the assassins on the ground, their mouths cursing. But in front of Wang Chong, all of them had their heads firmly lowered, not even daring to raise their heads. Their guilty consciences were on full display. This was broad daylight. If something happened to Wang Chong, the Holy Emperor would have to bear the consequences. Sai, go and hand things over with them. I still have matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave. Wang Chong didn't even glance at them. With these words, he took his leave. The people from the Bureau of Rights and the Chamberlain of Dependencies had the closest relationship with King Qi. Of the 6 bureaus, King Qi's influence had penetrated the most deeply. Wang Chong would never forget the trials of the Kunwa training camp and the reward ceremony not long ago, as well as what the Chamberlain of Dependencies and the Bureau of Rights had done to him. A new emperor brought his own ministers. Back then, he had been a nameless nobody, but now, even the Bureau of Rights and the Chamberlain of Dependencies would have to look up to him. Respectfully sending off Marquis, Li Sai respectfully bowed, and then quickly turned around to help Wang Chong deal with the aftermath. With so many people dead, there had to be an explanation. Moreover, as far as Li Sai could see, the people from the Court of Judicial Review, the Imperial Army, and the city guards were already hurrying over. We failed again. This brat's senses are extremely sharp. This is the second time we've failed. That's right. The people we've tried to kill have never lived to the next day. We've even killed people stronger than him. But our methods are completely useless against him. If this continues, we'll be at our wits' end. And we can't let anyone discover us. If outsiders know of our existence, we'll be the first ones master will kill. Chapter 663. The air was thick with the stench of blood, but the 2 black-robed men continued to drink as if nothing had happened. If Solitary Wolf were here, he would definitely be flabbergasted. These people's clothes and the auras they exuded were identical to those of the people who had pursued them in Sword Pavilion. No one had expected them to have pursued them all the way from the southwest to the capital. It seems like we'll have to ask Lu Wu to take action. Not far away, the 3rd black-robed man stepped on a corpse. He wiped the blood-stained sword in his hand and suddenly spoke. In an instant, the entire restaurant fell into a deathly silence, and the air was faintly filled with the smell of fear. What, you're not willing? Don't forget, if the mission fails, we'll all die. The 3rd black-robed man coldly sneered. But Lu Wu is too murderous. If we make too much of a ruckus and attract the attention of that person in the Imperial Palace, all of us will be doomed. The black-robed man drinking at the table said in a trembling voice. The capital of the Tang dynasty was known as the most dangerous place in the world precisely because the most powerful existence in the world presided over the Taiji Palace, the son of heaven of the Tang dynasty. Hearing this, the 3rd black-robed man immediately fell silent, and a look of deep fear appeared in his eyes. Relax. We're just some small shrimp. How could an existence like him possibly care about us? And as the emperor, he has a myriad of affairs to attend to every day. Do you really think that he would throw aside the affairs of the court to deal with us minor figures? These words seemed to be meant for the 2 black-robed men, but it was more likely that the 3rd black-robed man was trying to convince himself. In any case, we have to do this even if we don't want to. If we don't want to die, let Lu Wu out. As long as we can kill that brat, we'll have rendered a great service. When the time comes, we can just leave the capital as quickly as possible. You don't think that we have any other choice, do you? The 3rd black-robed man's voice grew firmer and firmer. Let's do as you say. The eyes of the 2 black-robed men flickered. After a long period of silence, they finally nodded. Once Lu Wu appears, that brat is doomed. But this way, we have to leave as quickly as possible. With that last sentence, the restaurant gradually returned to silence, and there was no more sound. The assassination on the street was just a minor interlude to Wang Chong, and it was very difficult for it to even cause his mood to waver. After finding another carriage, Wang Chong turned around and headed straight for the palace gate. "Take me to the death row." Wang Chong flashed his noble token and headed towards the death prison unimpeded. Wang Chong was the son of Heaven's disciple, and his young marquis token had the mark of a 5-clawed golden dragon. This was unique amongst all the marquises, and it was a special gift that the Holy Emperor had bestowed upon Wang Chong. Other than the depths of the harem and a few other special places, Wang Chong could use the young marquis token to move freely through the majority of the imperial palace. The death dungeon was a place where criminals who had committed serious crimes were locked up. Those who were locked up in the death dungeon rarely got out. However, compared to the celestial prison, where only the Holy Emperor's pardon could allow one to escape, the death dungeon was much more lenient. Wang Chong's second brother, Wang Bei, was locked up there. "Marquis, please come in." It was still the same guards, but when they saw Wang Chong, they had much more reverence on their faces. As they spoke, they lowered their heads and gazed at the ground, not even daring to breathe too loudly. That was then, and this was now. Wang Chong's reputation was like a thunderclap in the ears of these death dungeon guards, and they were filled with reverence. This was not Wang Chong's first time entering the death dungeon. After giving a slight nod to the guards, Wang Chong passed through the gate of the death dungeon and headed towards the depths of the dungeon with familiarity. The dungeon was deathly still, and the air was suffused with an intense and unsettling aura of death. It was like he had stepped into a dangerous netherworld. However, despite this, the dungeon did not feel cold at all. On the contrary, the air was filled with a scorching energy, as if there was an active volcano underground. Compared to the first time Wang Chong had come here, everything was completely different. "Second brother," Wang Chong called out. Looking at the disheveled figure in the dungeon with his back facing him, a trace of melancholy flashed across Wang Chong's eyes. This constant release of heat was not normal, and Wang Chong could feel that his second brother's berserker syndrome was getting worse. The dungeon was quiet, and there was nothing but the heat that filled the dungeon. "Have you gone to see Su Yiqin?" After an unknown amount of time, Wang Bei suddenly spoke. His voice was indifferent, and no emotions could be heard from it. "Yes." Wang Chong nodded, a faint smile on his lips. No one knew that Su Yiqin had been imprisoned in the Su clan. No one else had told him, but Wang Chong's second brother, Wang Bei, had left a small note for Wang Chong. In the War of the Southwest, Su Yiqin had arranged for the second wave of rations, armaments, and soldiers. However, they had barely made it 300 li from the capital before King Qi had seized and intercepted them. The one who had acted as King Qi's vanguard and led everyone to stop this matter was Zhou Zhang. King Qi was an imperial prince of the Tang dynasty, a member of the imperial family. There were many things that he could not personally do, but Zhou Zhang was different. He was King Qi's adopted son and held King Qi's token. He could use his authority to obstruct Wang Chong, but this would not have much of an effect on King Qi. At the very least, he would not be impeached by the imperial censors. If there really was a problem, King Qi would be able to cleanly explain himself. In the situation at the time, Su Yiqin was beset with problems both inside and outside. She was under pressure from both her clan and King Qi, unable to free herself. And the second wave of rations, armaments, and soldiers was extremely important to the Annam Protectorate, which was bitterly struggling to hold on in the southwest. It was at this critical juncture that Zhou Zhang and King Qi were stuck. But not even Zhou Zhang had expected that he would encounter Wang Bei, his lifelong nemesis, who had just been released from the death row prison. In that battle, Zhou Zhang had been heavily wounded, and just when he was about to be killed, Wang Bei had suddenly awakened. However, the people at Zhou Zhang's side had been reduced to piles of corpses by Wang Bei's berserker syndrome. In the capital, A plot against Wang Chong had been vanquished by the sudden appearance of Wang Bei. Wang Bei had obtained the promise of the Holy Emperor that he could be spared from death. But Wang Bei had no way of dealing with Su Yiqin. After all, this was an internal matter of the Su clan, and it was not appropriate for Wang Bei to interfere. It wasn't like he could have a berserker syndrome break out and kill every member of the Su clan. Thus, after that battle, Wang Bei had left a note for Wang Chong, and then returned to the death row prison. Wang Bei had thus successfully avoided the censor's impeachment, and he was in the forbidden area of the imperial city, and in the death row prison. Even though King Qi had flown into a rage when he heard about this, there was nothing he could do. I can only help you this much. Since you've already resolved everything, you shouldn't have come here. This isn't a place where you should be. Wang Bei said, his back still to Wang Chong, his voice utterly emotionless. You're my second brother, and we're family. Why can't I come? Wang Chong calmly said. There's no need to say such things. I'll only help you this once. I won't help you every time. In addition, after you leave, I'll tell the guards that I won't be meeting with anyone again. So, there's no need to come again. Wang Bei's voice was incomparably cold, suffused with the thick meaning of expelling a guest. As Wang Chong gazed at that familiar back, his heart throbbed in pain. This was his second brother. Ever since he was young, he had always done things his own way, bearing all the pain by himself. He had believed that he could resolve everything alone, but the situation had changed. Second brother, I know what you're thinking, but there are some things that you can't resolve by hiding in the death row prison. Moreover, the situation has already changed. Running away won't solve anything. As Wang Chong gazed at his disheveled second brother, a hint of respect flashed through his eyes, as well as deep sympathy and pain. Bang! A moment later, Wang Chong stomped his foot, causing the prison to tremble. A majestic blood-red color suddenly erupted from Wang Chong's body, causing the already scorching heat in the prison to rise another level. Wang Chong's temperament had originally been gentle and refined, but now he seemed to have become a completely different person. His aura was wild and tyrannical, filled with a thirst for blood and slaughter. If one looked closely, they would discover that Wang Chong's aura was 60 to 70% similar to Wang Bei's. This is impossible. The ground trembled. Wang Bei whipped his head around, his eyes wide and bloodshot. He stared in disbelief at Wang Chong, who had a similarly savage expression on his face. How could something like this happen? Only one person in a generation of the Wang clan will have the berserker syndrome. I thought that I alone was enough. How could you also have the berserker syndrome? Clatter! Clatter! The arm-thick chains vibrated, and in a flash of light, Wang Bei appeared next to the bars, his pale arms reaching out to grab Wang Chong. But when he was still several feet away from Wang Chong, he suddenly stopped. The entire prison had been set up to prevent Wang Bei's berserker syndrome. As long as he stood in the corridor, it was impossible for him to be injured. But Wang Bei didn't seem to notice at all. The veins on his forehead were bulging, and his expression was savage, as if he had received a huge shock. The berserker syndrome. There are actually two people in a generation. How can this be? How can this be? Wang Bei muttered to himself. As he spoke, he clutched his head with both hands, his body trembling, and his disheveled hair wildly dancing in the wind. Ah, this can't be. I don't believe it, I don't believe it. At the last moment, Wang Bei suddenly raised his head. His eyes were wide open as he let out an extremely pained howl. The entire prison shook from his howl. Wang Chong didn't say anything. Seeing Wang Bei in pain, a similar look flitted through his eyes. The berserker syndrome was the curse of the Wang clan, and it was a burden that Wang Bei had shouldered alone. Ever since he first discovered that he had the berserker syndrome, Wang Bei had deliberately distanced himself from everyone. He had even begged the king of Song and the holy emperor to lock him in the depths of the death prison. Wang Chong knew what Wang Bei was afraid of. He was afraid that Wang Chong would end up like that legendary ancestor and kill all of his family. If possible, Wang Chong didn't want to force Wang Bei like this. But Wang Chong knew very well that he wasn't just forcing Wang Bei, but also helping him. If Wang Bei continued to be locked in this sunless death prison, his second brother's life would truly be ruined. Chapter 664. Moreover, the world had changed. At a time like this, Wang Chong needed the help of his family, his second brother Wang Bei, even more. His second brother had to know that there were some matters even more important than the berserker syndrome. Second brother, don't deceive yourself. You know that the berserker syndrome can sense each other. When I first entered the capital, you already knew. This is why you avoided me and hid in the death prison of the imperial palace. Wang Chong sighed. How could his second brother's thoughts be hidden from him? But even though he had guessed at his second brother's thoughts, Wang Chong's eyes showed no satisfaction, only bitterness. But second brother, there are some things that can't be avoided. As Wang Chong spoke, he leaned his back against the wall and slowly sat down. Whether or not his second brother would listen, there were some things that Wang Chong had to say. At the very least, he had to try one last time. In the prison, Wang Bei's entire body was trembling, seemingly completely immersed in his own world and hearing nothing. But Wang Chong knew that the other party had heard every single word he had said. Because this was his brother. This was his second brother. He might not necessarily respond, but he would definitely hear and help him. Big brother, did you know? I've been made a marquis, and His Majesty personally made me the young marquis. In the history of the Tang dynasty, the Sage King personally made me a marquis. This is probably the only time in the history of the Tang dynasty that the Sage King personally made me a marquis. In addition, father and big brother have also been rewarded. Their status is greatly elevated. In the future, they will assuredly be promoted step by step in the army. Your Wang clan is certain to enjoy limitless glory, like the noon sun. Even King Qi will not dare to act as he did in the past and recklessly deal with me. The prison was still quiet with only Wang Chong's voice. But at some point Wang Bei, whose body had been trembling in pain, had calmed down. Although there was still no response, he was no longer as agitated as before, his entire body much calmer. However, what Wang Chong was about to say next was obviously not what he had imagined. But big brother, did you know? Right now, everyone in the capital is envious of the limitless glory. But second brother, did you know? Father, big brother, and I almost died on Mount Yuanfeng in the southwest, never to return. As Wang Chong spoke, he turned his head to look at his second brother, Wang Chong, who was in the cell. Seeing his second brother's body visibly tremble, Wang Chong smiled and continued. I know what you're thinking. I know you don't want to hurt us when the berserker syndrome breaks out. But do you know that even if you lock yourself up in this prison in the palace, it won't change anything? If big brother, father, and I are destined to die, we will still die in the end. The only difference is whether you kill us or not. But for us, is there any difference? The Southwest, what in the world happened? A voice suddenly rang out from the cell, interrupting Wang Chong's words. Although Wang Bei still had his back to Wang Chong, this was the first time Wang Chong had taken the initiative to ask a question. Wang Chong grinned. Without hiding anything, he gave a detailed account of the Southwestern War. As a descendant of the Wang clan, his second brother also had the right to know these things. The entire Southwestern War, from the departure, to the first melee, to the final decisive battle, had been filled with countless twists and turns. As one of the main participants and decision-makers in this war, Wang Chong's narration of this war, that had affected countless people in the world, was far more detailed and soul-stirring than anyone else's. Outsiders could only see one side of the glory, but beneath that calm surface, the turbulent undercurrents and waves were far fiercer and more dangerous than anyone could imagine. Wang Chong spoke of many things. This was probably the most detailed account of the Southwest, and the number of people in the entire Tang dynasty who could hear such an account was few and far between. On the other side, in the cell, Wang Bei said nothing, nor did she show any expression or movement. But Wang Chong knew that she was definitely listening more carefully than anyone else. Second brother, everyone has a responsibility for the rise and fall of the world. Our Wang clan is a clan of ministers and generals, so we naturally bear more responsibility than anyone else. If even we do not do our utmost, what hope does the empire have to speak of? When the nest is overturned, no egg can remain unscathed. You have also seen the crisis of the empire this time. The Tang dynasty is no longer the Tang dynasty of the past, and the foreign countries are no longer the foreign countries of the past. The world has already changed. Beneath this calm surface, there are already turbulent undercurrents. I hope that this is not the first time, and certainly not the last. This time, we were lucky enough to defeat the Mengshi, Yusang army. But what about next time? And the time after that? What if all the foreign countries on the border of the Tang dynasty join together? At that time, will we still be so lucky? Second brother, my strength alone is too weak. I want to do some things to change some things, but there are some things that I cannot bear alone. In this world, there are some things that are more important than the berserker syndrome. Second brother, I need your help. After saying these words, Wang Chong gave a deep sigh and stood up. Whether or not his second brother would listen, he had already said what needed to be said. What came next was not for him to decide. Second brother, in this world, there are some things that are more important than the berserker syndrome. The berserker syndrome is only a curse on the body, not the soul. Don't let your mind be controlled by your body. After saying these words, Wang Chong stood up and left. The prison behind him fell into a long, deathly silence. Wang Bei sat there alone, not saying a word. No one knew what he was thinking. At night, the capital was quiet, with only the sound of the night watchman and the patrolling of the city guards and imperial army. The Wang clan residence was dotted with red lanterns, like the sparks in the sky. In the four corners of the Wang clan residence, no one had noticed that early in the morning, black-robed men had suddenly appeared on the roofs of the Wang clan residence. It's about time. We can summon Lu Wu now. Remember, don't let anyone from the Wang clan escape. In addition, if the imperial army and night watchmen come, kill them. Don't let them get in the way. The group of black-robed men stared at the Wang clan residence in the center. It was quiet there, the red lanterns hanging from the eaves making the place seem even more serene and peaceful. It was already deep into the night. At this time, the maids and servants of the Wang clan had all fallen into a deep sleep. Even the guards had gone to bed, and the few patrolling guards were no longer a threat. This was the best chance to strike. Buzz! A group of black-robed men sat cross-legged on the eaves of the Wang clan residence, their 10 fingers rapidly forming hand seals. In the next moment, looking down from the sky, one could see dark beams of light suddenly shooting out from one of the black-robed men to another. In the blink of an eye, an invisible and bizarre formation had enveloped the entire Wang clan residence. Wang! In the darkness of the night, no one noticed that an enormous dome of light, pitch black beyond compare, suddenly rose up from the four corners of the Wang clan residence. Finally, it completely enveloped the Wang clan residence. If one looked up from the inside, one would see that the sky above the Wang clan residence had darkened, but no one had noticed. As the darkness deepened, an invisible and bizarre atmosphere began to spread through the air, growing more and more uneasy. Kacha! The ground of a pavilion in the northeast corner of the Wang clan residence suddenly split open, and a massive sound came from underground. Who is it? Who is it? Where is it? Several Wang family guards heard the noise and quickly flew over. However, before the two of them could react, pung, pung, 2 arms as thick as a grown man's thighs and as hard as iron drilled out from the ground, grabbing their ankles. Ah! There was a shrill scream as their clothes, and even their stellar energy began to burn. Blazing flames gushed out of their eyes, mouths, and ears. In the blink of an eye, the 2 Wang clan guards had been burnt to a crisp, turning into thousands of black particles that scattered into the air. Rumble! The earth split open, and the 2 thick steel-like arms pushed outwards, completely parting the ground around the pavilion like a wave. Ah! A bestial roar came from underground, and a strange giant-like figure rose up from the ground. His body was incomparably huge. His 2 arms were like the thighs of an adult, and his 2 thighs were like 2 huge stone pillars. Standing there he was 7 meters tall, much taller than the invincible General Li Sai. Kill! The giant roared, and his entire body exploded with the brutal and vicious energy of a primordial beast. Boom! It was only a single punch, and before his fist could even touch it, the pavilion that was a few steps away was immediately shattered into pieces by an invisible force. And those wooden fragments seemed to be ignited by something, burning fiercely, and the flames soared dozens of feet into the air. Kill! Kill everyone! The giant roared, his eyes glowing red as he repeated the same words over and over again. Waves of intense killing intent condensed into a tangible substance, and even the surrounding space began to distort. Bang! Bang! The giant's gaze swept around, and he quickly set his sights on a brightly lit study in the distance. He strode over. In the darkness of the night, that study was particularly eye-catching. To the giant, it was like a beacon pointing the way. Huh? Who is it? How dare you come to the Wang clan and cause trouble? Chapter 665. Mayasame Ayaka was the first to notice the anomaly in the Wang clan, so she was the first to make a move. When everyone in the Wang clan was asleep, Wang Chong had arranged for Mayasame Ayaka to be the #1 expert of the Wang clan at night. Clang! Without any mishap, Mayasame Ayaka stabbed her sword into the giant's chest. However, sparks flew, and a piercing metallic screech sounded. Mayasame Ayaka's sword was unable to pierce through the giant's chest at all. How is this possible? Mayasame Ayaka was astonished. Her face paled, and she lost her composure in an instant. The sword in her hand might seem unassuming, but it was actually a Wuxia steel weapon specially forged for her by Wang Chong. It was incomparably sharp, capable of slicing through a single hair. There were few things in the world that could withstand such a weapon. Even the famed plate armor of the Uzun tribe was nothing before this Wuxia steel weapon. Needless to say, anything else. Yet, this giant was actually able to block her Wuxia steel sword with just his physical body. This was something that Mayasame Ayaka had never imagined before. It was simply inconceivable. Roar! Mayasame Ayaka was taken aback by the roar, but the giant wasn't. With a flash of light, a fist the size of an alms bowl abruptly smashed toward Mayasame Ayaka with a seemingly slow yet swift fist. Ah! Mayasame Ayaka screamed in agony as she was sent flying along with her sword. With a resounding boom, she smashed through a roof a dozen zhang away, along with countless other roof tiles. It was unknown whether she was still alive or not. Roar! After sending Mayasame Ayaka flying with a single punch, the giant paid no heed to her at all. Instead, he dashed toward the brightly lit study in the distance. An assassin! The entire Wang clan was thrown into chaos. Such a huge commotion had attracted everyone's attention. Many guards rushed out of their rooms and charged toward the giant from all directions. Ah! The giant punched out, and countless people screamed as they were sent flying. Many people were burned to ashes by a purple flame while they were still in the air. Boom! 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 No matter how many people there were, or how strong they were, all of them were like tigers that had entered a flock of sheep. With a single punch, they were shattered into pieces and burned into ashes. All of the Wang family guards, no matter how many there were like ants in front of the giant. No one was a match for him. Flames spread through the Wang family estate. All the halls, pavilions, waterside pavilions, and corridors collapsed and burned. The giant was like a destroyer, turning everything in its path into ashes. Stop! Just when the giant was on the verge of destroying the Wang clan and killing all of the guards, and then heading toward Wang Chong's residence, a roar echoed out. Rumble! Just as the giant was about to break out of the encirclement, a tall figure clad in heavy armor slammed into the giant. In the study, a lantern was lit, and Wang Chong was seated cross-legged on the floor. After returning from the imperial palace and meeting with his mother, Wang Chong had been cultivating in his study. This was how Wang Chong had spent the majority of his time after returning to the capital. But tonight was destined to be different. Ah! Screams suddenly came from outside. At the start, Wang Chong had paid them little attention. Although the Wang clan could not be considered a dragon's lair or tiger's den, it was still filled with experts, and not a place an ordinary person could barge in. Moreover, Mayasame Ayaka and Li Sai were secretly patrolling. But gradually, Wang Chong began to sense that something was wrong. The screams outside did not weaken in the slightest. On the contrary, they only grew louder and louder, accompanied by the sounds of buildings collapsing. This was not a sign that the conflict was being resolved. What's going on? The capital is at the feet of the Son of Heaven. How could someone have barged in here? Frowning, Wang Chong suddenly stood up. Slamming open the door, Wang Chong walked out of the study. Even though Wang Chong had already prepared himself, he still couldn't help but be stunned by the sight outside. Although the Wang clan residence could not compare to King Qi's, or the King of Song's residences, it was still a clan of ministers and generals. It had all kinds of pavilions, gardens, and ponds. But when Wang Chong walked out of the study, he saw that everything had changed. Many of the buildings, gardens, and ponds had been razed to the ground. And on the remains of these buildings flames blazed. Wherever Wang Chong looked, the ground was covered in a thick layer of black ash. And in the center of this black ash was a muscular man around 7 meters tall, standing like a boulder in the ruins of the Wang clan residence. Across from him, the invincible great General Li Sai was engaged in a fierce battle. Although Wang Chong hadn't seen the battle, he could smell the scent of burning flesh and blood in the air, and he instantly paled. Just what sort of monster is this? Wang Chong had seen his fair share of experts, including Huashu Wuzong and Duan Gechuan, but none of them had given Wang Chong the feeling this monster gave him. This was a killing machine that existed for the sake of destruction. Wang Chong could not sense any emotion from him, only a thick desire to kill and destroy. Clang! Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong drew his Wuxia steel sword from the sheath at his waist. Boom! With a stomp of his foot, Wang Chong shot into the air like a cannonball. Leaping dragon art. With a roar of a dragon, Wang Chong turned his body in midair, and instantly used his strongest leaping dragon art. This was originally a spear technique, but in Wang Chong's hands, it could be used with any weapon, and at the same time, it retained its original power. Boom! With a flash of light, Wang Chong became one with his sword, and like a meteor, he slammed into the giant's head. The Wuxia steel sword in his hand also stabbed into the Baihui acupoint on the top of the giant's head. With Wang Chong's current strength, this leaping dragon art was extremely powerful in his hands. In an instant, there was a loud boom, and the earth shook. The 7-meter giant's feet cracked, and half of his long legs sank deep into the ground. How could this be? Wang Chong's pupils shrank, and his heart trembled. At this moment, Li Sai's voice suddenly rang in his ears. "Young master, watch out!" Before Wang Chong could react, he saw a fist the size of an earthenware bowl, containing the power to destroy heaven and earth, rapidly growing from small to large and smashing toward him. Bang! Without any hesitation, Wang Chong punched out, and the giant's fists collided violently. Boom! An earth-shattering power instantly swept over, and Wang Chong's body trembled. Even with his astonishing strength, he was completely unable to withstand it, and his whole body was sent flying. Whoosh! A purple flame ignited from Wang Chong's right hand, which had collided with the giant. What kind of monster is this? The stellar energy in Wang Chong's body exploded, and instantly extinguished the purple flame. However, the stellar energy in his body had also been greatly depleted. Young master, be careful. This monster is very dangerous. The inner force in his body can detonate our stellar energy. If you are not strong enough, you will be directly burned to ashes. That's how all the guards died. Li Sai forced the monster back with his sword, and then retreated to Wang Chong's side. Wang Chong noticed that his right fist was charred black. Obviously, like him, it was also burned by the strange purple flame of the giant. But the strangest thing is the black scales on his body. Our Wuxia steel sword can't hurt him at all. Li Sai's chest rose and fell rapidly. He stared at the giant opposite him, and deep shock was revealed in the depths of his eyes. With his extraordinary cultivation base, and the Wuxia steel broadsword on his back, Li Sai did not know how many powerful opponents he had killed. But there had never been an opponent like the monster in front of him, who made Li Sai feel so frightened and dangerous. A monster that could block the Wuxia steel sword with just his body alone should not exist in this world. Wang Chong did not speak, and his eyes were fixed on the opposite side. He did not notice it before, but after hearing Li Sai's words, he looked carefully. On the surface of the giant's body, Wang Chong really did see many fine black scales. This is not something a human can have. Wang Chong's eyelids twitched. The creature in front of him had already surpassed the scope of a human. Li Sai was already the tallest person he had ever seen, but the creature in front of him was much taller than Li Sai. This was a real giant. And on the surface of his body, those fine black scales that could block the Wuxia steel sword were definitely not normal. In Wang Chong's memory, he had never seen such a monster, whether it was in his previous life or this life. Kill! I want to kill you all! Although Wang Chong and Li Sai had stopped, the giant did not. Its gaze quickly shifted from Li Sai to Wang Chong, and its eyes blazed with a bloody light. Bang! In a flash of light, a violet flame suddenly descended from the sky, smashing into Wang Chong and Li Sai. Let's go! The violet flame fell to the ground, triggering a heaven-shaking explosion. Countless stones and violet flames shot out in every direction. In the face of the giant's sudden attack, Wang Chong and Li Sai swiftly dodged, one on the left and one on the right. Ha ha ha, that brat came out on his own. Lu Wu has already locked onto his target. That brat is dead for sure. No one can stop Lu Wu. That fellow has boundless strength, and is impervious to swords and spears. Just the violet flames on his body are enough to burn them to ash. Pay attention to your cover. Starting from now, don't let anyone see you, and don't let anyone discover you. The longer Lu Wu fights, the angrier he will become, and the stronger he will become. Right now, we only need to pay attention to the finishing touches. Kill the target. We'll immediately leave tomorrow. In the four corners of the Wang clan residence, black-robed men sat cross-legged on the roof, their eyes glimmering with cold light. Lu Wu would not stop until he killed the last person. The Wang clan was doomed. Chapter 666. Boom, boom, boom. Dust churned and waves of energy surged. Within the Wang clan residence, Lu Wu was like a massive beast in human form, madly pursuing Wang Chong. His strength was inconceivably vast. Nothing, whether it was the walls or the buildings, could stop him. Careful, Li Sai gripped his sword with both hands, his mind extremely nervous. From the moment Wang Chong had appeared, this monster had placed all his attention on Wang Chong. Wherever Wang Chong fled, he would pursue him. Wherever he went, not a single tile remained. Li Sai, try his armpit, abdomen, back, tailbone, and life gate. Wang Chong shot into the air like a cannonball, flipping through the air before landing on a nearby roof, without so much as a speck of dust as he did so. This giant was so powerful that even Wang Chong, a cultivator of the imperial martial realm, could not stop him. And his body, which was impervious to swords and spears, and not even the Wuxia steel sword, made it impossible for Wang Chong to use his little yin-yang art. It's useless. This monster doesn't have any weak points. Our strength isn't enough to deal with him. Li Sai's voice came from the rear. The broadsword in his hand was taller than a man and could cleave apart mountains, but when it landed on the giant's body, it seemed to be as light as a feather, unable to affect him in the slightest. Impossible. Just how tough is this monster's body? Li Sai clenched his teeth tightly, and his heart was in turmoil. In order to completely block the heavy blows of his broadsword, one needed not just a powerful defense, but also an extremely high level of toughness. Scales that could block the edge of the Wuxia steel sword, and the body that could block the stellar energy of the broadsword, were simply inconceivable. Neither Wang Chong nor Li Sai had ever encountered such a strange opponent. He must have a weakness. A person without a weakness doesn't exist. I don't believe that his eyes can withstand the Wuxia steel sword. Wang Chong shouted. As he spoke, he pointed out with his finger, and two strands of almost tangible sword chi shot out towards the giant's eyes. However, at the next moment, Wang Chong's sword chi seemed to have collided with an invisible wall of chi. Chi waves spread out in all directions, and the two sword chi completely disappeared. Both Wang Chong and Li Sai, who was not far away, turned pale when they saw this. The giant's cultivation had reached an extremely shocking level. His defense was omnidirectional and three-dimensional. If even the eyes had such a powerful defense, it was hard to imagine how they could defeat this monster. While Wang Chong was thinking, Lu Wu raised his right hand and punched again. There was nothing in the air, but Wang Chong couldn't help but widen his eyes. With a stomp of his foot, he once more shot into the air. Right below him, the earth rumbled, and the two-story building collapsed in an instant. Then it burned with raging purple flames. Lu Wu's attacks were silent, and when he was still several zhang away, he would feel an invisible wave of energy pressing down on him. If he didn't react quickly enough, he wouldn't even know how he died. Moreover, the violet flames hidden in his internal energy were a massive threat. Just what is this thing? Countless thoughts flitted through Wang Chong's mind. He had been trying to figure out the origins of this thing this entire time, but to no avail. Even with the memories of his 2 lives, Wang Chong couldn't find any information on this monster. This was simply impossible. As the former Grand Marshal of the world, Wang Chong had the highest level of authority in that world. Whether it was the Tang dynasty, the Uzan, the Turks, or even the Arabs, Wang Chong even knew about a secret like the skyquaking giants. However, he couldn't find any information about this monster, let alone investigate its abilities. This was absolutely abnormal. Buzz! While Wang Chong was thinking, there was a flash of light, and a figure rapidly grew larger and larger in his eyes. Not good. How did it suddenly get so fast? Wang Chong was taken aback. Although the giant was strong, it couldn't compare to him in speed. This was the crux of why he could move with such ease. But at this moment, for some reason, the giant's speed had increased significantly. Boom! A massive pillar behind Wang Chong was pulverized while Wang Chong instantly split into 3, his Wuxia steel sword slashing at the giant's neck. Clang! Sparks flew as Wang Chong's Wuxia steel sword was blocked by the black scales on the giant's neck. Clang clang clang. At almost the same time, Li Sai flew over, his Wuxia steel sword slashing at the giant's head, neck, back, thigh. The sparks were extremely eye-catching in the darkness, but both Wang Chong's and Li Sai's Wuxia steel swords were blocked. Roar! The giant raised his arms, and a wild, boundless power suddenly exploded in all directions with him as the center. With this one strike, Wang Chong, the former war saint, and Li Sai, the future invincible great general, were both sent flying like ragdolls. A purple flame like kerosene spread throughout their bodies, burning fiercely. Damn it! Wang Chong clenched his teeth. He could sense that this monster was getting stronger and stronger, and the terrifying violet flames were like maggots in his bones, constantly consuming his energy. On the battlefield, Wang Chong wouldn't have cared. The little yin-yang art could replenish his energy at any time. But in a different place, the little yin-yang art was instantly rendered useless. Kill! Kill everyone! The bloody light in Lu Wu's eyes blazed, and a series of cracking sounds came from his body. The giant that had already been 278 meters tall suddenly grew even taller, reaching 289 meters. He seemed even taller, more muscular, and more terrifying, brimming with a boundless pressure. Bang! Lu Wu's 2 stone pillar-like legs stomped against the ground, leaving afterimages in his wake. Bursting with killing intent, he shot toward Wang Chong like a bolt of lightning. Young master, be careful! Li Sai was alarmed. At this moment, the giant's energy was even more frenzied and violent, even more dangerous and lethal. But what worried Li Sai the most was that the giant's energy was growing stronger and stronger. Don't kill my big brother! Suddenly, the crisp voice of a girl rang out in his ears. Several dozen zhang away, a group of maids, and servants from the Wang clan were trembling in fear. At the front of the group was a beautiful woman, and a little girl of 8 or 9, who were particularly striking. The little girl angrily glared at Lu Wu. Bang! Pung! There was a loud sound. Without any warning, the little girl suddenly rushed over. Yawa! Little sister, get out of the way! Wang Chong paled, but his voice was still echoing through the air. A second later, Wang Xiaoyao's petite body left a long afterimage behind her as she charged forward like a bolt of lightning, colliding with Lu Wu's mountainous body. Rumble! The earth quaked and the heavens swayed. The collision of these 2 figures, whose bodies were completely disproportionate in size, produced a sound like that of a primordial beast. Amidst the roar, the shockwave exploded. Wave after wave roared in all directions. Even the tiles and gravel on the ground were blown into the air. Pung! Within the surging dust, a petite figure was sent flying, but very quickly, that petite figure let out a soft snort, and once again rushed into the surging dust. Little sister. Wang Chong was alarmed. Li Sai, hurry and do it. Wang Chong became one with his sword, and charged into the dust. Almost at the same time, Li Sai let out a loud roar, and like a shocking rainbow, he charged into the rolling smoke and dust. Boom boom boom. A heaven-shaking explosion came from the dust. Wang Chong, Li Sai, and Wang Xiaoyao were engaged in a fierce battle with Lu Wu. Both Wang Chong and Li Sai were top-class experts of the present age, but the truly astonishing one was Wang Xiaoyao. This youngest daughter of the Wang clan had been born with divine strength, and after receiving the guidance of Wang Chong's master, the evil emperor, her astonishing talent had been unearthed, and her strength had risen to a new level, becoming even more terrifying and astonishing. In the War of the Southwest, Wang Xiaoyao had used almost no martial arts, but she had 2 golden hammers in her hands. Whether it was man or horse, she could take care of them with a single blow. There was no need for a second blow. Not even those generals had been able to block a simple blow from her hammer. This sort of divine strength could only be described as terrifying. In terms of pure physical strength, neither the greatly strengthened Wang Chong, nor the future invincible great general Li Sai, could compare to Wang Chong's little sister. The difference between the two was not just a little. The two were simply not on the same level. But even so, the combined strength of Wang Chong, Li Sai, and Wang Xiaoyao was only barely able to stop the 7-meter-tall Lu Wu. Roar! Kill! 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 Kill them all! The giant Lu Wu roared again and again, his arms swinging, each blow carrying enough power to shatter mountains. Wave after wave of astral energy surged out from his body. That special power kept detonating the astral energy within their bodies, causing purple flames to burn. Like kerosene, the flames spread across their bodies, rapidly depleting their strength. What a formidable child! How could the Wang clan have so many formidable individuals? The sight of the ferocious Wang Xiaoyao charging out of the Wang clan residence, and reversing the course of battle in a single move, and thwarting Lu Wu's assault. The black-robed men on the roofs of the buildings around the Wang clan residence were all stunned. One Wang Chong was already very formidable. Given the strength of their organization, he had always been able to detect and evade all their attempts. Then there was Li Sai, who was actually able to fight against Lu Wu in a direct confrontation. And now, a child of a few years had suddenly appeared. She seemed like a statue carved from jade, but her killing power was simply unheard of, even more ferocious than Li Sai. This was something that the black-robed men had never imagined. Chapter 667. So what if they have 3 imperial martial experts? They're useless against Lu Wu. They'll still die in vain. Soon in the northwest corner, a black-robed man wearing a sinister black iron demon mask on his face sneered. He was rather glad that he had used Lu Wu tonight. Otherwise, if he had recklessly charged in, unaware of the Wang clan's 3 hidden imperial martial experts, he might have suffered grievous losses. Everyone listen up. Do your best to maintain the boundary. In another hour, the battle will be over. The black-robed man wearing the savage demon mask coldly said. Lu Wu was impervious to swords and spears, and no weapon could wound him. Moreover, the longer the battle went on, the more furious he would become, and the stronger he would become. In the end, the Wang clan, including the targets, would still be doomed. Not even the people of the Wang clan could have imagined that the formation they had set up was not simply to prevent the Wang clan from escaping, or to alert others to the fighting in the Wang clan. More importantly, it was to prevent Lu Wu from harming his own people. Once Lu Wu fought for more than an hour, he would reach a critical point, and his speed, strength, and violet flames would undergo a qualitative transformation. In a short period of time, they would reach an inconceivable level. Once Lu Wu went berserk, He would need only 10 minutes to raze the entire Wang clan residence to the ground. Only after 10 minutes, when all the targets had been killed, and there were no living beings in the vicinity, would Lu Wu calm down. But not even the black-robed man could have predicted that the situation would develop in a different direction. Yeah, I don't believe that you're stronger than me. In the middle of the battle, Wang Xiaoyao had been repeatedly shaken by Lu Wu's attacks, and her heart had been provoked into a vicious rage, her body exploding with brute strength. Thump! Lu Xiaoyao leapt up and nimbly landed on the back of Lu Wu's shoulder. One of her small hands wrapped around Lu Wu's neck, while the other clawed at Lu Wu's neck. Awa! Lu Wu's entire body trembled in pain, and then he let out a shrill howl. But all the sound was concentrated within the Wang clan residence, and not a single sound escaped. Who asked you to hit me? Who asked you to hit me? Wang Xiaoyao clenched her teeth and shouted. She had always had a personality that refused to admit defeat, and in this battle with Lu Wu, she had been suppressed the entire time. Her temper had long since exploded. Bang bang bang, punch after punch. Wang Xiaoyao's small hands seemed to be exuding the strength of a mountain, each blow causing Lu Wu's body to tremble. This was even more powerful than the attacks from Wang Chong or Li Sai. Lu Wu's physical defense was extremely formidable, but the Wang clan's little sister's greatest strength was her astonishing innate divine strength. She was a complete match for Lu Wu. Ow! Lu Wu howled in pain, and with a fierce elbow strike, he sent Wang Xiaoyao flying. Little sister! Wang Chong stood on his tiptoes, drawing an arc in the air as he hurriedly flew over. With a flash, his right arm stretched out and steadily supported Wang Xiaoyao from behind. Third brother, I'm fine. What kind of monster is this? I still managed to rip off a few of your scales. Wang Xiaoyao spat on the ground, and with a wave of her hand, she tossed away a few black shards. Scales? Wang Chong's eyes widened as he looked in the direction Wang Xiaoyao had thrown them. Not far away, in a pile of rubble, several unremarkable black scales had appeared, their surfaces glimmering with a cold and gloomy light. Although these were just a few ordinary black scales that were unremarkable in a pile of rubble, the sight of them instantly set off massive waves. Bzzz. Wang Chong's eyes flashed as he suddenly raised his head to look at the nearby Lu Wu, who was locked in a fierce battle with Li Sai. At first glance, this massive monster of unknown origin seemed to have not changed at all. But Wang Chong quickly made a new discovery. Looking at its neck, Wang Chong could clearly see that it was missing a few scales, and there was also faint purple blood seeping out of its neck. This is... In shock, Wang Chong seemed to understand something. He turned his head to the innocent-looking little sister, his face brimming with shock. Wang Chong had known of his little sister's innate divine strength since she was a child. But ever since his little sister went to the Spirit Vein Mountain and received the guidance of his master, the evil emperor, Wang Chong had no idea what level she had reached. In the War of the Southwest, his little sister had been avoiding him from the very start, so it had been a very long time since Wang Chong had seen her fight. But Wang Chong had never imagined that his little sister's strength had already reached this level. Not even a full-strength blow from his Wuxia steel sword could destroy the scales on the body of that massive monster. But his little sister was riding on its neck, and using her bare hands, she was able to rip off its scales. Li Sai, think of a way to hold him down. I'll be right there. With no time to think, Wang Chong once more unsheathed his Wuxia steel sword, and gripped it with both hands. Boom! With a heaven-shaking boom and the clear cry of a dragon, Wang Chong rose from the ground, the Wuxia steel sword drawing a massive arc in the air as it slashed down from the heavens. Boom! A violet flame spread from Wang Chong's Wuxia steel sword. At almost the same moment, the 7-meter-tall Lu Wu was forced back into the ground by Wang Chong's slash. Roar! In an explosion of energy, Lu Wu's eyes blazed with bloody light. His two arms, thick as men's thighs, came together and slapped at Wang Chong. If this palm were to land, even steel would be turned into fried dough twists and rocks would be shattered, not to mention a human's body of flesh and blood. But before Lu Wu's hands could strike, clang! A heavy sword as tall as a man slashed at Lu Wu's arm. Lu Wu screamed in pain as his massive arm swayed, and was slapped off by Li Sai. Boom! Li Sai turned around and slashed at Lu Wu's left hand. Just as Lu Wu's left hand was about to strike Wang Chong, Li Sai swiftly slapped Lu Wu's left hand off. These two attacks were extremely fast and perfectly coordinated. The moment Li Sai blocked Lu Wu's attack, Wang Chong thrust 2 fingers into the black scales that Wang Xiaoyao had pulled off. Wang Xiaoyao tore off these fine scales, but at the same time, she left behind bloody wounds. Little Yin-Yang art. With 2 fingers in Lu Wu's neck, Wang Chong instantly activated the world's #1 evil art, the Little Yin-Yang art. The Little Yin-Yang art originally required the Little Yin-Yang sword to be used, and it could only be used when the opponent was heavily injured or on the verge of death. However, with Wang Chong's mastery of the Little Yin-Yang art reaching its peak, Wang Chong realized that this art had undergone a qualitative transformation. From a certain perspective, the consummate Little Yin-Yang art already possessed a portion of the power of the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art. Right now, even without the Little Yin-Yang sword, Wang Chong could absorb the energy of his opponent when they were not heavily injured or on the verge of death. This was the true face of the world's #1 evil art. But Wang Chong's cultivation was still too shallow, so he could not do what the evil emperor had done, instantly absorbing his opponent's energy and turning them into desiccated corpses. But even so, it was enough for Wang Chong. Boom! An icy and tyrannical energy, as mellow and thick as a burning knife, surged from Lu Wu's body into Wang Chong's, instantly dispersing into Wang Chong's meridians. In a flash, Wang Chong felt like he had been plunged into an ice house, his meridians, blood, and energy freezing. However, the strangest thing was that within this piercingly cold and domineering cold energy, there was also a volcanic magma-like scorching energy. These 2 energies, one hot and one cold, one in reverse, made Wang Chong feel like his body was being torn apart. This was something Wang Chong had never experienced before. In all his battles, Wang Chong had never encountered such a strange and unique energy. Just what sort of monster is this? Wang Chong's entire body shivered. Not even an expert of the great general level could possess such a complex stellar energy, but Wang Chong had encountered it in this monster. But Wang Chong quickly experienced the benefits of this strange energy. A majestic energy brimming with vitality suddenly surged through his body. Wang Chong's stellar energy had already been greatly consumed, but at this moment, it was not only replenished, but even the injuries from the violet flames were healed. Even his flesh and cells were brimming with vitality. In all his life, Wang Chong had never encountered such a unique energy. Bang! In a flash of light and a howling wind, 2 massive shadows swung at Wang Chong. Boom! Wang Chong's eyes flashed, and his body shot up from Lu Wu's head, barely dodging Lu Wu's attack. Awa! Lu Wu's eyes blazed with killing intent as he watched Wang Chong shoot up. Raising his head, he exerted strength in his legs and shot into the air in pursuit of Wang Chong. However, before he could fly up, 2 iron fists grabbed at him like lightning, grabbing both of his ankles. With a ruthless fling of both hands, he was flung down. "Get down here for me!" Li Sai's furious roar resounded through the world. Being repeatedly suppressed by Lu Wu had provoked the rage of this proud and violent invincible great general. His fists were burning with raging purple flames, and his stellar energy was incessantly burning. Even the clothes on his chest were burned, revealing his bulging muscles and steel-like chest. However, Li Sai didn't care at all. Boom! Leaping forward, Li Sai's eyes spat fire as he lunged at Lu Wu like an enraged beast, punching him again and again as they engaged in a fierce battle. On the other end, Wang Chong lightly stepped on a nearby wall and shot back with his sword. His 2 fingers stabbed into Lu Wu's neck as he activated the Little Yin-Yang art. That cold, biting, and tyrannical energy once more surged into Wang Chong's body. Wang Chong's strength rapidly increased, and in a few short moments, he had returned to his peak level. In contrast, on the ground, Lu Wu's energy had been soaring, but after Wang Chong used the Little Yin-Yang art, his energy began to flicker like a candle in the wind. Chapter 668. Damn it! Just what sort of technique did this brat learn, that he can even absorb Lu Wu's energy? Outside the Wang clan residence, on a roof in the northwest corner, the leader of the black-robed men wearing the demon mask stood up with a wave of his sleeve. His teeth were clenched as he viciously glared at Wang Chong. "Leader, we haven't received any information about the target's ability. It should be a hidden ability." A voice came from the side, belonging to a black-robed man who appeared to be a servant, a respectful expression on his face. Pung! Before he could finish speaking, an enormous force slammed into his body, fiercely knocking this black-robed man 60 meters away. What hidden ability? It's clearly a lack of investigation. There was no information on the target at all. The black-robed leader's eyes seemed to spit fire, his face brimming with hatred. This was not Lu Wu's first time on the job. He had existed for more than 100 years, and had dealt with even more formidable opponents. Moreover, there was no need for him to waste so much time. As long as Lu Wu appeared, the target would be smoothly eliminated, and all that was left was to clean up the mess. But this time, Lu Wu had also been the one to act. But from the start until now, everything had gone smoothly, and the target had never been able to absorb Lu Wu's energy. No one could endure Lu Wu's energy. In past experiments, all those who came into contact with this energy had died without exception. But now, someone was able to openly steal Lu Wu's strength in front of them, without the aid of any ritual tool. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have never dared to imagine it. "Leader, should we send someone in and work with Lu Wu to kill him?" Another black-robed man probed. "Are you muddle-headed? Lu Wu doesn't differentiate between friend and foe. Once he starts killing, he won't let anyone go. How can we work with him?" The latter immediately fell silent. "There's nothing we can do right now except maintain the boundary. In addition, the target can steal Lu Wu's energy. We must immediately report this to our superiors," the black-robed leader sternly said. "In addition, form a spell to stabilize the formation and prepare to activate Lu Wu's energy. No matter what, we must kill the target as quickly as possible." "But leader, this will harm Lu Wu and reduce his lifespan. I'm afraid that my lord won't be satisfied. This isn't something you should worry about. All of you should know how powerful Lu Wu is. If the target absorbs a large amount of Lu Wu's energy, only the heavens know what will happen. If the mission failed, who could bear the consequences? Do you want us all to die here?" That the surroundings quickly fell silent, and no one objected to the black-robed leader's words. From all directions, strange hand seals with billowing black smoke quickly disappeared into the black shield of light that enveloped the Wang family's residence. Within the Wang clan residence, the battle between Wang Chong, Li Sai, and Wang Xiaoya with Lu Wu had reached its most intense stage. Thick smoke was rising, and the shockwaves of their battle sent stone and wood splinters flying in every direction. The broken stones and wood shavings flew towards the surrounding walls, creating finger-sized holes on them. "Ah!" Cries of alarm came from the distance. All the maids, servants, and maids paled at this sight, their bodies trembling in fear. The Wang clan was a clan of ministers and generals, and it was patrolled by the imperial army. It was absolutely safe in the capital. No one had ever imagined that this sort of thing would happen. Almost half of the Wang clan residents had been destroyed by that humanoid monster. It was a scene of devastation and ruins everywhere. What's going on here? Why haven't the imperial army arrived after such a major event? Several dozen zhang away, next to a ruined fake mountain in a garden, Wang Chong's mother, Madame Wang, stared at the scene, her face ghastly pale and her voice fraught with worry. "Madam, the steward has already sent people to call them, but for some reason, they still haven't returned." A maid bit her lip, her face pale, and even her voice trembling. "Take some more people with you. You have to think of a way to call the imperial army over," Madame Wang said. Wang Chong and Wang Xiaoya were both extremely powerful, but in the current situation, Li Sai and Wang Chong were clearly on the receiving end. Even someone like Madame Wang, who didn't know martial arts, could sense that Wang Chong's defeat was only a matter of time. "Little sister, control his legs. Li Sai, pay attention to his hands. Do everything you can to control him. Don't let him attack me and little sister." Little Yin Yang art. Wang Chong was constantly working with Li Sai and Wang Xiaoyao. The three of them working together to control Lu Wu. Wang Chong could already sense that the little yin-yang art was crucial to dealing with this monster. As long as he could absorb its energy, the monster's strength would be constantly suppressed. But this was far from enough. This monster's strength was extremely unique. As time passed, its strength would continue to increase. Not even the little yin-yang art could stop this trend. No. If this continues, we'll all be exhausted to death. Wang Chong suddenly said. In the War of the Southwest, he had killed more than 10,000 Mengshi, Yusang soldiers, but when faced with this black-scaled monster, Wang Chong was like a child dragging a massive beast. He felt like he could break free at any moment and completely lose control. Moreover, the violet flames of this monster were still a massive threat. Wang Chong could use the little yin-yang art to replenish his energy, and his little sister had been born with extraordinary physical strength, so stellar energy wouldn't be much of a problem for her. But Li Sai was on the verge of collapse. The violet flames had already consumed more than half of his energy, and it seemed like he wouldn't be able to last much longer. If this continued, with one less Li Sai, everyone else would die. Young master, you should leave. I'll hold him off for a while so madam and the others can retreat. We can't deal with this monster with just our strength. We must call the experts of the Imperial Army and work together to deal with him. Li Sai said. His chest was heaving, and his body was covered in sweat. It seemed like he had consumed an enormous amount of energy. No. You take my little sister and leave. I'll hold him off. Before Wang Chong could finish speaking, he heard an indignant and childish voice at his ear. If you want to leave, you can leave. I'm not leaving. I don't believe that I'll lose to him. Wang Xiaoyao had a stubborn expression on her face, her puffed-up face giving Wang Chong and Li Sai a headache. Wang Xiaoyao was no longer the same as she had been in the past. Not even Wang Chong or Li Sai could change her stubbornness. At any other time, this would have been fine, but at a time like this it was fatal. Li Sai said nothing, only glanced at Wang Chong in between battles. This little sister of the Wang clan was unruly and willful, and she had an extremely high status. Crucially, she was also very strong. Not even Li Sai had the right to order her around. In this aspect, he could only rely on Wang Chong. Little sister, don't make trouble. Wang Chong deeply furrowed his brow. None of your business. Wang Xiaoyao's mind hardened, and she charged forward to engage Lu Wu in fierce battle. Waves of energy soared into the sky, and the dust shrouding the Wang clan residence grew thicker and thicker. Bang! Wang Xiaoyao left quickly, and returned just as quickly. With a boom, a black silhouette flew out of the roiling dust, and crashed into the ground, sending shards of stone and wood flying. Roar! After sending Wang Xiaoyao flying with a punch, Lu Wu roared and lunged at Wang Chong, his scarlet eyes striking in the darkness. Something's wrong. As he stared at those scarlet eyes, a thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and it became clearer and clearer. This monster was definitely coming for him. Of the three of them, he was the one being pursued the most. This made Wang Chong feel like he was prey. But this was not the most important thing. When Wang Chong heard Lu Wu's roar, a thought quickly became clear. From the start of the battle until now, other than the words kill, kill, and kill everyone, Wang Chong had not heard the monster say anything else. This was not the reaction of an intelligent being. And when he looked into the monster's eyes, Wang Chong could only sense endless madness and chaos. If there's only madness and chaos, then it won't be able to distinguish friend from foe. Lil Sis and Li Sai would always be his targets. He definitely wouldn't just attack me like now. At the very least, his main target would be me. This is definitely not something a crazed monster can do. Wang Chong's gaze swept the area. At first glance, everything seemed normal, but a moment later, Wang Chong's heart thumped as he realized that something was wrong. The capital was at the foot of the Sun of Heaven, and it was home to nearly 1 million people. Although it was late at night, and many shops were closed, there was still no lack of businesses that stayed open late into the night. Moreover, even in the depths of the night, there were still quite a few wealthy merchants in the vicinity of the Wang clan residence. their homes lit with lanterns or hanging from their eaves. But as far as Wang Chong's eyes could see, it was pitch black. Other than the lights within the Wang clan residence, Wang Chong couldn't see the slightest bit of light outside. It was pitch black outside. Moreover, after fighting for so long, despite all the activity within the Wang clan residence, there was not the slightest sign of activity outside, not even the barking of a dog. Something's wrong. This isn't normal. Wang Chong's brow rose in understanding. Roar! A shadow lunged at him from behind. Wang Chong's body bounced, and he immediately flew back, dodging the attack by a hair's breadth. But the fake mountain beneath him was not so lucky. Boom! The fake mountain, which was as tall as two people, was crushed into powder by an invisible force. Not even dregs were left. It was as if it had evaporated. All Wang clan guards, listen up. Immediately leave and check the surroundings. If you find anyone suspicious, stop them. Wang Chong landed on a twisted plum tree, his voice rising by a notch. Chapter 669. Yes, young master. Didn't you hear? Go. The group of guards immediately flew away. Madam, young master, it's bad. Not long after the guards dispersed, a panicked shout came from the direction of the Wang family's main gate. A butler dressed in brown, who had gone out to seek reinforcements under Madame Wang's orders, ran over in panic with a group of maids and servants. As he ran, he shouted, "What are you waiting for? The gate has been blocked by something. The maids and I have tried everything we can, but we can't get out. Can't we even climb over the wall?" A yellow-robed personal maid next to Madame Wang anxiously asked. "It's useless. We tried, but we couldn't climb over the wall because of something. Big Sister Zhang's face is covered in blood," another pretty maid behind the butler said. The other pretty maid behind the housekeeper said. Her face was pale, and it seemed that she had suffered quite a bit of shock. Buzz! The speaker was unintentional, but the listener was interested. The distant Wang clan maid was still confused, but Wang Chong's heart began to thump and sink. Wang Chong had only been guessing before, but he was now certain that besides this monster, there were many other people who had come to this ambush. Moreover, these people were here for him. Sword Pavilion, the black-robed men. A thought flitted through Wang Chong's mind. He suddenly understood, and his face turned extremely unsightly. After the victory in the southwest, Wang Chong had become a thorn in the side of Uzun, Mengshi Zhao, the Turks, Goguryeo, and the other foreign countries, a target that they had to eliminate as soon as possible. But whether it was Uzun, Mengshi Zhao, or the other foreign countries, their ambushes and assassinations were not beyond the realm of normal humans. Bows, spears, formidable martial arts experts. These were all within the realm of normal. However, the scene playing out in the Wang family mansion had already surpassed the scope of normal martial arts. Whether it was the giant bell that had suddenly fallen from the sky during the day, or the humanoid monster that had suddenly appeared in the home and was massacring everyone, or the strange purple flame energy, or the unknown power that had enveloped the entire Wang family, none of these were normal martial arts methods. In Wang Chong's impression, only the black-robed men who had raped and murdered the wife and daughter of Mengshi Zhao's Lord Jelifeng, the black-robed men who had pursued Jianan Governor Zhang Wentua, and the mysterious Black Arrow were capable of such a feat. These bastards are truly audacious. Now that he understood the situation, Wang Chong clenched his fists, his expression instantly turning furious. The capital was under the Son of Heaven's feet, with hundreds of thousands of imperial guards. It was also where the Holy Emperor presided, and the Wang clan was a clan of ministers and generals, an important minister of the Tang dynasty. This chaotic group of people actually dared to openly launch an attack in the capital, intending to destroy a noble clan of the Tang dynasty. This was no longer something that could be described as audacious, but completely lawless. There were no laws or rules of the secular world that could restrain them. As these thoughts flew through his mind, Wang Chong quickly regained his composure. Anger could not solve any problem. Now that he knew that this monster had accomplices, the urgent task at hand was to resolve this problem as quickly as possible. The battle has been going on, but there hasn't been any activity outside. The steward also said that something is blocking the outside. This means that these people are using some sort of special formation. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. The forms of martial arts were ever-changing. His father and Xinyu Zhongtong could gather the strength of everyone and transform into terrifying weapons of war, like the mighty miracle god and the Vajra god. And this was only one form of martial arts and internal energy. Wang Chong knew that there were some formations that could form a boundary, but they were not like the black-robed men's boundary, which was so large and powerful that it could envelop the entire estate. If all sounds could not be transmitted, all the scenes would be obscured. No, it was impossible for all the scenes to be obscured. The energy shrouding the Wang clan residents might be able to greatly obscure the vision of those outside, but it could not be completely obscured. If the master of a mad dog could not see its target, it would be impossible for it to madly bite its target. The walls. Wang Chong hurriedly glanced at the surrounding high walls and suddenly understood. The residences of ministers and generals all had high walls, both to protect themselves and to prevent outsiders from spying on them. But at a time like this, they were the best helpers for those people to block the vision of outsiders. In other words, in the middle of the night, as long as the patrolling night watchmen, city guards, and imperial army soldiers did not notice, no one would notice. Even if the Wang clan residence was razed to the ground, no one would notice before daybreak. In other words, your positions are very easy to find. A cold and harsh light flashed through Wang Chong's eyes. Boom! His body shot forward as he pushed the phantom movement technique to its limits, instantly dodging Lu Wu's destructive blow. A moment later, Wang Chong had an idea. Wei Guo, Wei Wu, quickly take some men and build walls in the northwest, northeast, southeast, and southwest corners to be 3 zhang high. If you don't have anything suitable, then use cloth. Start from the corner and extend to the sides at least 10 zhang. Wang Chong suddenly said, Yes, young master. In the distance, 2 tall silhouettes responded and immediately led the group of guards to fly away. The Wang clan didn't have many other things, but they were bestowed with all kinds of silk, satin, and cloth. They had everything one could wish for. This was a common situation among the clans of ministers and generals in the capital. Swish, swish, swish. In just a short while, the high walls at the 4 corners of the Wang clan's mansion were immediately erected with cloth walls. On the perimeter of the Wang clan residence, a group of black-robed men had been so focused on Wang Chong that they didn't even notice what the guards were doing. But when their vision darkened, cloth began to rise from the walls, blocking their line of sight. The black-robed men instantly fell into an uproar, their faces paling. Not good. Foul brat, we've been tricked. This fellow discovered us. Leader, we've lost contact with Lu Wu. No one had expected such an abrupt turn of events. For the first time in their operation, they suddenly felt like they had been outmaneuvered by their target. Too smart, too quick to react. Even now, they still didn't know how he had discovered them. Moreover, all the cloth had precisely blocked their line of sight, allowing them to spy on the Wang clan residence and command Lu Wu's position. This is troublesome. In order to prevent outsiders from spying on us, we surrounded the entire Wang clan residence, and even the walls. Now that he's inside with the cloth blocking our line of sight, there's nothing we can do. Another black-robed man who seemed to have some status stood up, his brow deeply creased, his expression troubled. They had made a cocoon of their own making. They knew that their target would be difficult to deal with, but they hadn't expected him to be this formidable. In just a few moments, many twists and turns had occurred. This was only the beginning, but so many problems had already arisen. He suddenly understood why he had failed so many times in his previous operations against the target. This was definitely the most difficult target to deal with. What do we do? The black-robed man subconsciously turned to the demon-masked leader. Wang Chong's actions had basically caused Lu Wu to lose control. This was already outside of the plan. As expected, this target was rather unique, definitely one of the most difficult to deal with. In the current situation, they could either remove the black shroud over the Wang clan residence, but this would play right into the target's hands. There was an extremely high chance that the target would escape or attract the attention of the Imperial Army. But if they didn't do this, they wouldn't be able to deal with the target. In truth, the best method was to command Lu Wu to tear apart the cloth on the walls. Crucially, they didn't even know where Lu Wu was, or which direction he was facing. Rumble, dust billowed, and a cloud of dust rose from under the cloth into the sky. Although they couldn't see or hear anything, just by looking at the rising dust, everyone could guess that after this wave of action, that brat was definitely carrying out some kind of operation. And it was definitely something that would make them all uneasy. Damn it! The black-robed leader's entire body emitted cracking sounds. This operation had not gone smoothly at all. He hadn't expected so many things to happen to Lu Wu. Don't worry about him. Lu Wu will be fine for a while. And no one can kill Lu Wu. A long night is fraught with dreams. Hurry up and activate Lu Wu's abilities as quickly as possible to kill off all the Wang clan members. As for the loss of Lu Wu's lifespan, if the higher-ups ask, I will take responsibility. The leader of the black-robed men gritted his teeth as he said the last sentence. Yes, the crowd roared in response. In the next moment, everyone got busy. One after another, ancient, mysterious, and extremely powerful magic arts were sent into the formation. At some point, the black shroud over the Wang clan residence was beginning to take on a faint red hue. Strange talismans suffused with the aura of time began to flicker in and out of existence. But for the time being, no one had noticed anything. Roar! Within the Wang clan residence, Wang Chang's plan was reaching its most crucial point. In the midst of a few crooked plum trees that were swaying left and right, a piece of cloth wrapped around this place like a rainbow. And in the middle of this curtain of cloth, Wang Chang's thumb was stabbed into the neck of Lu Wu. Below him, Lu Wu had gone completely berserk like an uncontrollable beast. Wang Chang's judgment was correct. Once the walls of the Wang clan residence were covered with cloth, Lu Wu no longer focused on Wang Chong. Li Sai and Wang Xiaoyao had both become his targets. Most importantly, a monster that had lost its mind and had no specific target was far easier to deal with than a monster that was under control. Li Sai moved to the Kim position. Little sister, it's your turn. Attack his eyes. As long as you attack his eyes, he'll lock onto you. Keep rotating so that the monster doesn't know what to do. Wang Chong hovered over Lu Wu's head as he issued a string of orders. Now that he had found Lu Wu's weakness, it was much easier to deal with this sort of invulnerable, monstrous strength, blazing with violet flames, and yet lacking in intelligence and reason. All he could do was sink into madness and slaughter. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.